In the beginning, there was only stillness and absolute, pitch-black darkness that represented perfect order. Then, a flash of brilliant light shattered the void. That sudden blaze was loud and dazzling, the very embodiment of change and chaos. It pierced through the darkness, setting time and movement into motion. From this light, life began to emerge and grow stronger. Among these new lives, 6 of the brightest entities declared themselves the luminous ones, claiming leadership over all living beings. However, their ambition and rivalry led to conflict. They clashed endlessly, plunging the world into turmoil. Eventually, the darkness, unable to bear the arrogance of the luminous ones any longer, created a guardian of order to judge them. This being was called Phantaminum. Born from the depths of darkness, Phantaminum was the mightiest of all. He set out on a mission to subdue the luminous ones and succeeded in defeating them one by one. Each time he did, he transformed them into radiant jewels and sealed them away. After he had captured all the luminous ones, the darkness ordered Phantaminum to return with the jewels. But he disobeyed. Captivated by the beauty of the shining gems, Phantaminum embedded them into his own body and declared himself the King of Jewels. As the King of Jewels, Phantaminum and his gemstones ruled over all life. The world, gripped by fear, came to know him and his loyal followers as the Devourers of Light. Many years later, a mysterious guide held a newborn child in her arms. With a solemn expression, she spoke to the infant, saying that at last, the new luminous one had been found, the only being capable of standing against both the former luminous ones, now subjugated under the King of Jewels, and, as well as Phantaminum himself. She told the baby, "You are our only hope." In that moment, the baby urinated on her. A nearby individual remarked that she should wipe it off. But the guide simply looked at the mess and declared, "This is holy water." Then, holding the child close, she softly proclaimed that from this moment on, this child would make the world shine forever. Somewhere deep within the tower, a young man stood alone at the summit of a mountain, his voice echoing into the vastness around him. He muttered in confusion, wondering aloud where he was. Frustrated, he cursed and asked where the exit could possibly be, and more urgently, where that bastard Phantaminum had disappeared to. The disorientation was beginning to wear down his sanity. Suddenly, a massive portal opened right before his eyes, tearing through space with a burst of energy. From it emerged a peculiar creature, resembling a large, humanoid rabbit. The rabbit-like being addressed the young man with an air of grandeur and ceremony. "Congratulations, O one who has opened the door and entered. You have earned the right to become a regular one who is permitted to climb my tower." The creature went on, explaining that to become a regular and enter the tower was to be given a rare chance to obtain everything. Then it turned and asked him directly, "So what do you say, regular?" The young man stared back, his thoughts racing. "What's with this weird rabbit?" Privately, the rabbit examined the youth with narrowed eyes, silently acknowledging something troubling. This boy, it thought, was someone who should never have entered the tower. Speaking more cautiously, the rabbit warned him outright. "You really shouldn't have come in. You must not get involved with this tower." Ignoring the warning, the young man snapped back. "Then at least tell me how to get out of here." But the rabbit gave an unexpected response. "I don't know the way out either," it admitted. "You'll have to find it yourself." The young man's voice grew sharper. "When you say everything is in your tower, does that mean Phantaminum might be here too?" The rabbit hesitated, then replied, "Well, I don't know what that is, but I can't say it isn't. After all, everything is said to lie at the top of the tower." There was a long pause before the young man spoke again. His expression hardened with resolve. "Fine," he said. "In that case, I'm going in." The rabbit looked visibly surprised, but the young man was unwavering. He declared that he had followed Phantaminum into this place, and since the rabbit had no way out to offer, his mind was made up. "I've decided," he said firmly. "I'm going in." Elsewhere, a massive structure floated in the sky. From above, a loud, booming voice echoed from speakers embedded in the floating building. The announcer addressed a crowd below. Arise, regulars. You have arrived at the floor of test, the very bottom of my tower. This place is what we call test hell. As the voice declared this solemn introduction to the gathered regulars, Urek Mazino was shown elsewhere, completely indifferent to the chaos. He was still asleep, muttering in his dreams about something that smelled like salt. Meanwhile, the speaker continued delivering the rules of the game to the assembled regulars. There are 400 of you gathered here. From now, you will fight, kill, and be killed. When only 200 remain, the game ends. Those 200 will advance to the next test. If the number doesn't drop to 200 within an hour, all of you will fail. So don't bother hiding or slacking off. Kill with everything you've got. Down on the battlefield, chaos erupted. A terrified boy was seen darting through the melee, desperately trying to evade his attacker. As he ran, he pleaded for mercy, begging his pursuer to spare him. Then, a voice rang out from somewhere nearby, ordering him to move. Before he could react, an attack nearly cut him down, but a heartbeat later, the attacker chasing him was pierced through the heart by a swift, powerful strike. The boy stared, wide-eyed, at the one who had saved him. A girl stood there, calm and composed. She looked into his eyes and asked gently if he was all right. Stammering, the boy thanked her. She introduced herself simply as Lo Pabia Evelyn. She dismissed his gratitude. "No need to thank me," she said. Confused, he asked her why she would save him during a kill or be killed test like this. Evelyn responded matter-of-factly. From the moment she heard the rules, she had come to a clear conclusion. They didn't know what kind of tests awaited them next, but if the top 200 were selected based purely on strength here, it would put her at a disadvantage. So, she explained, she planned to eliminate the strong early, before they could become threats. The boy blinked in surprise. "So you spared me because I looked weak?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. Then she tilted her head and asked, "Unless you're actually strong?" "No, not at all," he exclaimed. "I'm really weak." "Good," she said with a small smirk. "Let's go, weakling." Across the battlefield, a monstrous figure with 6 glowing eyes and 6 massive hands tore through his enemies. Evelyn paused to observe him and remarked in awe, "Wow, that guy's insanely strong." She turned to the boy and added, "This is my chance. To take on someone who can fight so many at once without another word." Evelyn leapt into action. She charged at the monstrous regular, engaging him with fierce precision. The 6-eyed brute let out a blood-curdling cry as she stabbed him, her blade plunging deep into his flesh. With brutal efficiency, she stepped on his neck and twisted the weapon, silencing him for good. Blood sprayed across the battlefield as the giant fell. Evelyn, unfazed, turned to the stunned boy and ordered him to follow her. As they navigated through the chaos, Evelyn suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her expression shifted. She told the boy, in a serious tone, to hide immediately. As they crouched behind cover, Evelyn pointed up toward a nearby hill. She whispered to the boy beside her that a woman stood there. Curious and cautious, the boy asked in a hushed tone, "Is she so strong that even you have to hide?" Evelyn nodded solemnly. "Of course," she replied. "That woman is a princess of Jihad." The boy's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's the princess of Jihad? I've only heard rumors about her." With a frustrated sigh, Evelyn muttered, "Damn, why is a monster like her in our batch?" Despite the tension, the boy couldn't help but stare and mumble. "But honestly, just like the rumors said, she's stunningly beautiful." Without warning, Evelyn poked him directly in the eye. Why'd you do that?" he cried out, wincing in pain. "I don't know," Evelyn answered flatly. "I just got annoyed for various reasons. Maybe it's because I don't want to lose to someone who's both strong and pretty." As blood welled up from the boy's eye, he panicked and blurted, "No, you're just as beautiful, really." Suddenly, up on the hill, the princess drew her weapon with a calm but menacing grace. Evelyn's expression turned sharp as she immediately shouted, "Get down." Without a moment to spare, the princess hurled her weapon with terrifying force. It flew through the battlefield like a missile, slicing through the air and through numerous regulars without hesitation. Screams echoed across the ground as bodies fell where they stood. The boy, shaken, ducked for cover alongside Evelyn. As he caught his breath, he wondered silently, how did she take out so many people all at once? Above the chaos, the speaker crackled again. The announcer reported in a cold tone. The number of survivors has dropped dramatically in an instant. Watching the dust settle, Evelyn turned to the boy and asked dryly, "So do you still think she's beautiful?" The boy gulped and stammered, "WL, yes, but now it's different. I don't think I could even meet her eyes anymore." Evelyn gave a sly smirk and poked his other eye. "Now I get it," she said. "I finally understand why men die young. Maybe losing your sight might actually help you survive." "Don't say scary things like that," the boy whimpered in protest. With a sharp, vigilant gaze, the Princess of Jihad surveyed the chaotic battlefield from her vantage point. Amidst the frenzy, her eyes fell upon an unusual sight: Urek Mazino, peacefully lying on the ground, fast asleep. She furrowed her brows and muttered to herself, "He's sleeping? What is with that guy?" Then, noticing a group of regulars approaching him, she added, "Looks like they've teamed up for this round. He's dead meat." Down on the field, one of the approaching men stared at Urek in disbelief. "What's with this guy?" he asked. Another snorted. "They say the tower's full of weirdos. Guess it's true. Never thought I'd see someone napping in the middle of this chaos." Annoyed, one of the men yelled, "Hey, wake up, you bastard." He stepped forward to kick Urek, but before his foot could land, Urek lazily rolled out of the way and mumbled, "I'm trying to sleep here." The man froze. "This crazy bastard," another member of the group growled. "Let's just kill him." As they lunged forward, Urek dodged with almost lazy ease, spun on his heel, and delivered a powerful kick that sent two attackers flying across the battlefield. The princess watched from above, wide-eyed. She hadn't expected that kind of strength from someone who looked half asleep. With a casual flip, Urek rolled through the air and landed smoothly on his feet. Stretching slightly, he addressed the stunned group. "Pretty sure said I wanted to sleep a bit longer." Pale with fear, one of the men stammered, "Go ahead. Go back to sleep." But Urek wasn't done. Charging forward, he shouted in frustration, "If you wake someone up in the middle of sleep, it ruins the sleep quality." Overwhelmed, the remaining men screamed and fainted on the spot. With the threat gone, Urek dusted himself off and sighed. "Now that the nuisance is gone, maybe I can get some more sleep." Just then, the speaker echoed across the battlefield with a mechanical chime. "Attention, regulars. One player remains to be eliminated for the test to conclude." Suddenly, the Princess of Jihad leapt down from her perch, landing gracefully behind Urek Mazino. He turned to face her, raising an eyebrow with a smirk, and asked if this was some kind of date invitation. The princess scoffed, denying the suggestion. She pointed toward the man Urek had spared and reminded him that he had forgotten to finish the job. Drawing her weapon, she declared that she'd help by killing the man herself. But Urek stopped her, calmly interjecting that he didn't need that kind of help. Confused, she demanded to know why he hadn't killed the man. After all, that was the rule of the game. Urek shrugged and replied that he had no reason to follow the rules, claiming he was a free man who did things his own way. Aggravated, the princess lunged at him with her blade and warned that if he planned to take the test with such a half-hearted attitude, she'd kill him herself. Urek simply smiled and said, "You can try." Still, as he looked at her more closely, or even at a glance, he couldn't help but think to himself, "This woman, she's absolutely stunning." The princess noticed his diverted gaze and challenged him. "Why are you avoiding eye contact? Are you scared now?" Flustered, Urek stammered that it wasn't fear. He just wasn't good at looking directly at pretty girls. "I'm a total novice when it comes to this," he admitted awkwardly. She pressed him to take the test more seriously. But Urek suddenly had an idea. "Wait, it doesn't have to be one of us," he exclaimed. The princess, still tense, reminded him that time was running out and most of the remaining regulars were hiding. "Wouldn't it be more logical," she asked, "to take out the person standing right in front of them rather than wasting time searching?" But Urek grinned and pointed up at the speaker hovering above. "If that's how we're doing it, then the one showing himself most boldly is right there," he said. Raising his voice, he shouted toward the loudspeaker. Hey, you. Yeah, you. You square thing. Are you included in the head count too? Inside the control center, the test proctor, a rancor, blinked in disbelief. What is he talking about? Urek continued yelling. Get down here. I want to catch you and finish this test. Shocked, the princess shouted back at Urek. Are you insane? That's the test proctor. He's a rancor, and he's not even included in the count. Even if you could catch him, it wouldn't matter. Undeterred, Urek shouted up again. Come on. How about we say you count as 2 if I catch you? As he observed Urek's reckless shouting, the test proctor couldn't help but mutter to himself in disbelief. The complete lunatic has joined the test. In an instant, a brilliant beam of light descended from above. The proctor himself shot down through the sky with blazing speed and landed directly in front of Urek, creating a shockwave that startled many of the regulars nearby. Gasps rippled across the battlefield. No one had expected the proctor to descend in person. Even the Princess of Jihad appeared visibly shaken by the rancor's sudden presence. Towering over Urek, the proctor glared down at him and barked, I don't know where you came from, but you must be from some backwater place that doesn't even know what a rancor is. There's always at least one idiot like you in every batch. Poor, clueless regulars, his voice grew more cutting as he continued. You went in the test by catching me? Do you even know who you're talking to? I'm a proctor of the floor of test. What do you think I am? Without a flicker of hesitation, Urek looked the man dead in the eyes and replied flatly, What else? A rookie. The test proctor narrowed his gaze at Urek and dismissed him with a condescending laugh, calling him just a kid. But Urek only stared back, completely unfazed, meeting the rancor's glare with casual indifference. Suddenly, the proctor let out a thunderous laugh that echoed across the battlefield like a shockwave. The very air trembled under the surge of Shinsu it carried. Watching from a distance, the Princess of Jihad observed quietly, thinking to herself that this was to be expected from a rancor. Just from laughing, his Shinsu is overflowing terrifying. The proctor then snapped at Urek, demanding to know if he was insane. He reminded him of the tower's strict rule, that rancors were forbidden from interfering with regulars, but test supervisors like him were authorized to impose appropriate sanctions on those who broke the rules during a test. With a cold edge to his voice, the proctor warned, Losing a leg sounds like a pretty lenient punishment in this situation. Don't you think? Before the threat could escalate, Urek grabbed the proctor's wrist with a firm grip, catching the rancor completely off guard. With an almost amused look, Urek calmly asked, Appropriate sanctions? Did I do something wrong? Shocked by the regular's raw strength, the proctor internally questioned what kind of power this kid possessed. What the hell? Does this guy actually have some hidden strength as a regular? Urek, still gripping the man's wrist tightly, added, Aren't sanctions only something people with real ability are qualified to give? Staring in disbelief, the proctor's confidence faltered as he struggled to comprehend the situation. This brat, he hasn't even touched real Shinsu training. And yet, just then, a voice boomed from the speaker above the battlefield. The number of regulars remaining on the field is now 200. The game has ended. I repeat, the game has ended. From her vantage point, the princess glanced around the field and wondered aloud. Did someone finally take out the last one? A hint of relief touched her face. Though she was glad the test was over, part of her felt that letting Urek die in his recklessness wouldn't have been such a loss. After all, anyone foolish enough to pick a fight with a test supervisor clearly had no concept of self-preservation. Yet, deep down, she acknowledged something else. He might actually be useful to me later. Someone like him could come in handy for my own goals. As the proctor turned to walk away, he offered Urek a final warning over his shoulder. You're lucky, regular. Be grateful you survived. Face the next tests with humility. This tower is filled with monsters beyond your comprehension. Don't let arrogance get you killed. As the tension subsided, the proctor respectfully approached the Princess of Jihad, bowed his head, and offered an apology for his earlier behavior. I've been rude, Princess, he said sincerely. The princess, maintaining her poise, dismissed the apology with a simple, It's fine. Still energized from the confrontation, Urek Mazino scoffed, clearly disappointed. He muttered to the proctor, "What a shame I could have taken him down in seconds." Instead, the proctor turned back to Urek and shouted, "Crazy bastard!" As he did, an overwhelming surge of Shinsu erupted from his body, thickening the atmosphere with intense pressure. Urek's expression changed to confusion as he struggled to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the energy being released. What is this strange power? He thought, stunned by the unfamiliar force radiating from the proctor. At that moment, a new figure emerged, calm and composed, wearing a mask. He approached and addressed the enraged proctor directly, calling out Supervisor Danzon. His voice carried both authority and familiarity. The masked man raised a hand and said flatly, "That's enough." Danzon's tone immediately shifted as he acknowledged the new arrival, calling him Chief Test Supervisor. Still curious and brimming with confidence, Urek looked at the masked man and asked, "Who are you?" "Someone stronger." The chief responded calmly, but with unmistakable dominance. "No, I'm someone much stronger." Without further delay, the chief ordered Danzon to stop wasting time and conclude the event. "The test is over. Wrap things up, Danzon." Danzon bowed again, this time in obedience. "Understood." He turned to the battlefield and shouted through the loudspeaker, his voice booming across the field. "The test is over. Those of you still alive will proceed to the next test. A much tougher one awaits you next time, so be prepared." Then, his voice took on a sharper edge as he glared specifically at Urek and barked, "Especially you." Danzon continued, threatening Urek directly. "You got lucky this time, but if something like this happens again, I'll tear you apart on the spot, regular or not." Unshaken, Urek smirked and replied coolly, "Sure. Go ahead and try." Then, another voice came over the speaker system, this time more mechanical and neutral. "The first test has ended. All regulars on the field will now be transported to the next test site." Inside the chief test supervisor's office, the atmosphere in the office was heavy as the chief looked toward Danzon with thinly veiled disappointment. He spoke slowly, emphasizing every word. "How disgraceful, Supervisor." A supervisor interfering in the first test stood with his head lowered. He apologized earnestly, admitting that he shouldn't have allowed a regular's provocation to get the better of him. He explained that it was the first time such a thing had occurred, and he had lost control. The chief test supervisor narrowed his eyes and questioned Danzon coldly, asking if Danzon was acting so brazenly because the floor ruler was currently absent. Startled, Danzon quickly denied it. "And no, absolutely not. How could I ever think such a thing?" he insisted. He stammered on, saying he had heard terrifying rumors of the chief's power back when the chief had been ranked above them. He claimed he remembered those stories well. The chief's tone softened only slightly. He replied that it was good Danzon understood, but warned him sternly that something like this must never happen again. "It's unlikely," the chief said, "but if you ever fall for a regular's provocation like that again, make sure you crush the regular completely." The chief added dryly that if Danzon did act next time, he wouldn't clean up the aftermath for him. He then dismissed him with a final command. "You may leave." Danzon left the room reluctantly, muttering to himself in frustration as he walked through the corridor. "Damn it, what does he expect me to do? I'm only holding back because I'm scared of him." But his thoughts quickly shifted back to Urek. "Still that regular bastard if I ever get the chance. And with the chief test supervisor's permission, I'll crush him, no matter what." Back inside the office, the chief was now reviewing Urek's profile, projected as a floating hologram above a tablet-like screen. He smirked slightly and muttered to himself, "It seems we've got an interesting regular to play with this time, Urek Mazino." His eyes narrowed as he scanned the file. But just how secluded is the place this guy came from that even his origin isn't listed? At the next test site, a new group of regulars gathered for the upcoming challenge. The air buzzed with tension and curiosity. A test supervisor stepped forward to address them. One regular glanced around the crowded space and shouted in annoyance, 200 still left. That's more than I expected. Maybe I should have cut down the number a bit more." While he was ranting, Urek accidentally bumped into him. The man turned angrily, but Urek raised a hand in apology, explaining, "Sorry, there were just too many people." The regular's demeanor shifted instantly upon recognizing Urek. He pointed and exclaimed, You're that guy from earlier." Without missing a beat, he grinned and declared excitedly, "Let's go, boss." Urek stood there, confused, watching the man's enthusiastic reaction. "No matter how I look at him," he thought to himself, "he looks way older than me." From above, a new figure descended gracefully, floating through the air with ease. She addressed the gathered regulars with a confident voice. "Welcome, regulars. Congratulations on surviving the first test," she announced. "I am Gisle, the supervisor for this round." Urek narrowed his eyes and thought to himself with a sigh of annoyance. Another supervisor? This one's definitely different from the last guy. Great. More trouble. Gisle began explaining the next phase. She told them the test ahead would be quite simple in theory, but essential for anyone wishing to climb the tower. To ascend, she said, her tone serious, you must master two essential skills: cooperation and division. She reminded them that up until now, they had been fighting and killing each other. But now, the time had come to start working together. From this point on, she explained, you'll be divided into teams of 3. Then, with a cold, knowing smile, she added, of course, only close enough to betray one another at any time. As she clasped her hands together and conjured a magical sigil, she declared, the key to reaching the top of the tower lies in understanding both cooperation and division. She concluded, and so, the game you'll be playing is the traditional team challenge, flip it or leave it. A wave of confusion spread through the group as regulars whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of this strange game title. What kind of game is that? One muttered. No one had heard of it before. Elsewhere in the tower high above, in a secluded part of the tower, a man sat lazily atop a floating platform. In his hand, he casually rolled a ball of condensed shinsu. With a flick of his wrist, he hurled the shinsu orb toward a distant target, another regular attempting to flee. The orb struck its mark, knocking the unfortunate runner to the ground. Blood spilled from his body as he collapsed. Floating nearby, the chief test supervisor, Rahab, appeared silently and observed the aftermath. Isn't your way of killing a bit lazy? Rahab asked coolly. The seated man turned, feigning surprise. Oh, when did you get here, Rahab? He replied with a smirk. Then he asked, so, what do you think about this batch of regulars? Rahab's tone was flat as he answered, nothing special at all. As he spoke, the scene cut to glimpses of numerous formidable figures, towering presences cloaked in glowing shinsu. Each one radiated overwhelming power, standing silently like sleeping giants within the vast, mysterious tower. Some of the regulars glanced around in confusion. They began to murmur among themselves, trying to understand the game ahead. Flip it or turn it. What kind of game is that? One asked uncertainly. Another regular scoffed at their ignorance. Seriously? Where have you all been living if you don't know flip it or turn it? Urek, unimpressed, turned to the confident regular and asked, so you know how it works? The regular grinned proudly and replied, of course I do, brother. He then explained, those who choose flip get grouped with other flippers, and those who choose turn join the turners. You simply go with the team of your choice. He demonstrated by holding out his hand. If the direction of my palm matches yours, we're on the same team. So, brother, let me know in advance if you'll flip or turn. Urek raised an eyebrow and replied flatly, why would I want to team up with you? Before the conversation could continue, the test supervisor, Gisle, stepped forward and addressed the group. Well, unfortunately for you, she began with a sly smile, this version of the game has slightly different rules. She explained that while flip it or turn it was traditionally a simple team selection game based on palm directions, this test had a new twist. In this version, she announced, you're not playing against each other. You'll be playing against that goat standing behind me. The regulars were stunned. What? Against the goat? Gisle confirmed it with a nod. Yes. Now pay close attention to the goat's hands. Its right hand represents turn, and its left hand is flip. Look at my hands now. She mirrored the goat's gesture and held out both hands. My right hand is turn and my left is flip. In this demonstration, I successfully completed the round. She continued, all 200 of you will observe the goat's movements carefully. When the round begins, you must match the goat's hand gestures exactly and simultaneously by the end of the chant. If you succeed, you pass. If not, you fail. Her voice turned sharper. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. So, shall we begin the first round? A regular shouted in protest. Already? Gisele ignored the panic and signaled to start. All right, everyone, stay focused and get ready. She then turned to the goat. Begin the game. The goat stepped forward and started the chant, singing in an odd rhythm. One round of flip it or turn it, even if you're scared. One round of flip it or turn it, even if you're trembling. The goat's hands moved rapidly, flipping and turning with blinding speed. The regulars stared in disbelief. He's way too fast, one of them exclaimed, struggling to keep up with the lightning-quick movements. The game had only just begun, but the pressure was already overwhelming. Truly pathetic, everyone. Only 24 of you managed to follow the goat correctly. Among the successful few stood Urek Mazino, who had passed the test with ease. One of the regulars, struggling to catch his breath, turned to him and asked in disbelief, "Brother, did you actually manage to follow it?" Urek looked at him blankly and replied, "How could you fail something like this?" Ignoring the reactions, the test supervisor addressed the group again. Those of you who succeeded have now earned the right to choose your teammates. A murmur spread through the crowd. The right to select teammates, a regular repeated with confusion. The supervisor nodded. Yes, you get to choose one participant from among those who failed against the goat and challenge them in a round of flip it or turn it. If you win, they become your teammate. She then added with enthusiasm, "Shall we do a demonstration?" Among the 24 who passed, does anyone want to go first? It's first come, first served. Without hesitation, a confident regular named Evelyn raised her hand. "I'll give it a try," she said with a smirk. The supervisor smiled. "Excellent. Evelyn, as one of the chosen participants, please select someone from the group who failed." Among the failed group, one of the regulars nervously watched Evelyn approach. He thought to himself, "Don't tell me she's going to pick me?" But to his disappointment, she walked past him without a glance and stopped in front of another regular. "I saw you during the earlier test," Evelyn said, nodding to the chosen candidate. "You weren't bad. How about teaming up with me?" The rejected regular sighed internally. As expected, of course, she wouldn't choose someone like me. The supervisor gave the go-ahead. "Very well. The two of you will now proceed with the game as per the commands." Evelyn and her new partner faced each other in unison. They began a chant. One round of flip it or turn it, even if you're scared. One round of flip it or turn it, even if you're trembling. As the round progressed, Evelyn's partner struggled to keep up. "Why is it so fast?" he gasped, overwhelmed. Evelyn sighed, visibly disappointed. "I thought you might be of some use," she said coldly. "But I guess I was wrong." Evelyn gave a cold smile after a failed attempt and remarked with sharp disinterest that she had no intention of being on the same team as someone who couldn't even follow a game this simple. The test supervisor, watching closely, mused to herself with admiration, as expected from someone belonging to one of the 10 great families. They clearly understand the nature of the tower and are playing by its cruel rules. Turning back to address the entire group, the supervisor announced sternly, "Unfortunately, the two of you failed to become teammates." Just as she finished speaking, a massive shadow loomed overhead. A giant, monstrous hand descended and grabbed the regular who had lost the game. The goat, massive and terrifying, opened its gaping maw. The test supervisor calmly declared, "Those who fail will be offered as sacrifices to the goat." The chosen regular screamed in terror, "No, you didn't say anything about this. You didn't." But it was too late. The goat swallowed him whole. The remaining regulars erupted in panic, shouting in confusion and horror. "What's going on?" The supervisor clarified coldly. "As you just witnessed, if the selected person fails, they're sacrificed to the goat. However, if they succeed, they're given a choice. They may either team up with the person who chose them or offer that person to the goat instead. Her voice echoed through the chamber as she issued her final instructions. Continue forming teams of 3 through this process. But remember, anyone who fails to form a team by the end will be eliminated. Evelyn took a moment to reflect internally. I see now, while this test appears to be about team formation, it's really just another survival trial. If someone can copy the goat's movements during the first round, they're given a unique opportunity, the power to eliminate someone they dislike from this field. It's brutal but efficient. Meanwhile, Urek Mazino watched the events unfold with quiet curiosity, noting how rapidly the atmosphere had shifted into something more deadly. The supervisor resumed her directions. Now then, those of you who succeeded, choose your opponent from the failed group and begin the next round. One of the princesses, elegant and confident, approached a regular with a smirk. Shall we play? She offered. Elsewhere, a blonde-haired regular whispered to himself with cold calculation. So who should I kill? Another, trembling with fear, pleaded desperately. Please, spare me. Urek turned to a regular who had spoken to him earlier and casually invited him to play. Hey, let's play a round. The startled regular stammered. With me, brother? Urek raised an eyebrow and responded bluntly. What? Don't want to play? I thought you said you wanted to team up with me. Urek turned to the nervous regular and asked him directly why he was hesitating. Before the regular could respond, the test supervisor addressed the entire crowd with a chilling reminder. By the way, anyone who refuses to play will be sacrificed to the goat immediately. Panicked, the regular shouted, I'll do it! Internally, he was filled with dread. I'm doomed. There's no way I can keep up with this guy's speed. Just then, Urek called out to him with a confident tone. Hey, a man faces forward, right? The regular froze, tried to interpret his words. Does that mean we both flip? Is he trying to confuse me? Should I trust him or not? To his shock, both of them performed the same gesture. They had succeeded. Overcome with relief and gratitude, the regular exclaimed joyfully and called Urek his brother. He asked, For people who just met here, what made you trust me like that? You know your life depended on my move just now, right? Urek replied calmly, Yeah, I know. Still amazed, the regular pressed further. Then why? You're not even strong enough to make that kind of gamble. Urek shrugged and gave a simple answer. I just thought you might trust me. Since you trusted me, I trusted you too. Isn't that what teamwork's about? Then, Urek added with a smirk, If not you, maybe there's no one else. At that moment, the goat moved in to grab Urek. But the regular immediately shouted, Stop! Don't eat my brother. We're a team. The goat, clearly disappointed, withdrew its hand. It had lost its meal. Urek gave a small, satisfied smile. His gamble had paid off. The regular hadn't betrayed him. The grateful regular quickly bowed in front of him and apologized for his earlier rudeness. Brother, outside the tower, I was just a nobody, but somehow I was lucky enough to get this chance to enter. I'll never forget the grace you showed me by trusting me. Until the day our bond ends, I swear, I will never betray you. Urek chuckled at the sudden loyalty and said, all right, but you look way older than me. You can speak casually. The regular adjusted his tone quickly and nodded. Understood. Bro, I mean Urek. He then raised his fist with enthusiasm. Let's pick the best teammates and form the strongest team, brother. Urek laughed and replied with his usual blunt honesty. Sorry, but the moment you joined, we already lost the chance to be the strongest team. The test supervisor stood before the crowd and declared that the first round of the game had come to an end. She revealed that, unfortunately, only 7 people had successfully formed teams. Without giving them much time to rest, she continued, Let's move on to the next game. From this point forward, only the representative of each team will participate. At her signal, the goat began its chant once again, moving with bizarre energy. 1 round of flip it or turn it, even if you're scared. 1 round of flip it or turn it, even if you're trembling. The regulars began to complain among themselves. They noticed the goat was slipping in extra, fake hand movements, likely to throw them off. One regular called out to Urek, clearly frustrated. But Urek calmly waved off his concern and told him not to make a scene. I lost on purpose, he said coolly. The regulars stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do that? Urek gestured toward the rest of the room. Look around. I'm sure there are others who did the same. Still confused, the regular asked. They failed intentionally? But why? Urek answered. We already identified the skilled players from the last round, didn't we? Who would risk challenging them and starting another match? If you win now, you're forced into a game. It's just more hassle. They're avoiding unnecessary conflict. So am I. Realization slowly dawned on the regular. Then, no one will challenge us this round. Urek gave a half smile. For now, probably not. No one's eager to pick a fight with strong opponents. But then his tone shifted. That said, the world is full of crazy people. As if on cue, a voice cut into the conversation. Urek turned to see a familiar figure approaching. It was the princess from the earlier match. Recognizing her immediately, he said, You were in the game earlier. Without hesitation, the princess made her intention clear. Play a game with me. Urek paused, eyeing her carefully, and wondered to himself if she had come to eliminate him. He asked, You want to play a game? If you're here to kill me, you'd better give up now. But the princess simply shook her head. No, I want to team up with you. But of course, you'll have to win first. Some of the regulars looked on in disbelief as the princess boldly approached Urek Mazino. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. Many were stunned that she wanted to team up with him. Some began to wonder aloud whether Urek might also be from one of the 10 great families. Urek, however, responded bluntly. He told the princess that he had no intention of teaming up with her. Sorry, he said, but I already have someone in mind. The princess raised an eyebrow and asked skeptically if there was someone better than her in the room. Urek shrugged and responded with a teasing smirk. Who knows? Maybe it just comes down to personal preference. She crossed her arms, unimpressed, and replied confidently, Well, that doesn't matter. I'm going to team up with you anyway. Let's start the game. Urek sighed inwardly, thinking to himself that she was a stubborn woman. Still, he warned her, You're going to end up as a sacrifice at this rate. But the princess remained unfazed. She stared him down and said with fierce resolve, I'll play with everything I've got. If you don't want to die, you'd better focus. The two of them faced off as the round began. The chant echoed once again. One round of flip it or turn it, even if you're scared. At just the right moment, Urek shouted, Now. The game ended swiftly. The princess looked at him and, with a soft grin, said, As expected. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The regulars were stunned. The princess had lost. Before anyone could react further, the goat, now drooling with hunger, stretched out its massive hand, reaching toward the defeated princess. Some of the regulars were in disbelief. They exclaimed that Zahar's princess had been caught and eaten. Murmurs of shock spread quickly. The test supervisor shouted, calling out, Lord Goat, before the goat could eat the princess. A few regulars questioned what they were seeing. Was this real? More murmurs echoed through the room. Zahar's princess. The test supervisor then confirmed what many feared. She had failed. The princess failed on only the second test, she said. The regulars were confused and panicked. One asked if the goat had really eaten her. Another questioned what it all meant. Some wondered aloud. Is it really true that Zahar's princess failed her test so quickly? Another regular commented that someone of her status should have easily passed the regular selection test. Isn't it supposed to be easy for a Zahar princess? They added. The regular then turned to Urek. A frustrated regular confronted him, demanding to know what he was thinking. What the hell are you planning, Urek? After picking Zahar's princess, who are you planning to team up with now? Urek replied simply, pointing to someone, that kid. The regular was stunned. What? Are you talking about that weak-looking brat? The one avoiding eye contact, probably afraid no one will pick him? He's clearly not strong. Why him? Urek explained that there was something familiar about the boy. There's something similar. The smell. When I first arrived here, there was this faint smell of salt. That kid smells just like that. What are you even saying? You passed up the chance to team up with Zahar's princess because of a feeling? Not because he's strong or useful. Urek confirmed it. Yeah. The regular groaned in frustration. Arg, I'm going crazy. Urek then questioned them back. By the way, you keep bringing up Zahard this, Zahard that. What the heck is Zahard? The regular was shocked. What? You don't even know who Zahard is, and yet you didn't recognize one of his princesses? Urek, still puzzled, asked, the king of this tower? You're telling me someone came from outside the tower a long time ago and now rules it? He couldn't believe it. There's actually someone like that? He turned to the goat, desperate. Hey, goat, is there a way to revote? I feel like I need to meet this kid to call the king. When told it wasn't possible, Urek shouted in frustration. I can't. I'm going crazy. I need to meet that kid, this king, and ask him how to get out of here. I need to find Phantaminum and the others. The regular standing nearby snapped. The one going crazy here is me, Urek. Regretting it now is useless. But Urek remained calm. It can't be helped. I try to hold back longer. For now, let's just catch the guy you tag in the next game. The regular finally relented. All right, I'll trust your instincts, Urek. As the next round began, the massive goat took center stage once again. With eerie enthusiasm, it began to sing the new round's chant. Give me another plate if you lose. Give me another plate if you lose. The atmosphere grew heavier. One of the regulars groaned in frustration, exclaiming that the game was only getting more difficult with each round. The test supervisor then addressed the crowd, her voice echoing throughout the arena. Only 6 people succeeded this time. Urek Mazino, unfazed, clenched his fists with renewed energy and shouted confidently, "All right, let's do this." His teammate responded with equal enthusiasm. Yes, Urek. Meanwhile, Evelyn stood silently, her expression thoughtful. She reflected inwardly on the game's brutal mechanics. After her initial participation, she had been unable to form a team again. She realized something crucial. The nature of the test had changed. In the earlier rounds, it was all about skill, she thought. But now, what truly matters isn't ability, it's trust. Evelyn recognized that the game had evolved into a psychological battle. Even if someone managed to turn an enemy into an ally, they would never survive without absolute trust. But trust was a rare commodity in this space, where every participant was ultimately a rival. She thought about Mr. Liu. Could someone truly trustworthy even exist in a place like this? She wondered. A part of her did trust him, but she immediately dismissed the thought, shaking her head. No, I trust that person, but he's just too weak, she concluded bitterly. If we formed a team, there'd be no future for us. Urek casually called out across the arena. Hey, he said. Evelyn, watching from nearby, observed the direction of his gaze and frowned, recognizing who he was addressing. Her thoughts turned bitter. Is he seriously trying to team up with that loser? She sighed internally. No one's coming for me either, she thought. I'm not remarkable, so there's no point in eliminating me. But no one wants me as a teammate either. I'm just forgettable. Elsewhere, Lou stood alone in quiet despair, his eyes low beneath the brim of his hat. He felt the reality of the situation closing in on him. At this rate, I'll just be left behind and fail the test, he thought. I'll go back to where I belong. Back to the gutter of his successors, to the backwater village where the godless and abandoned end up. Then, Urek's voice rang out again, more direct this time. Hey, you kid with the hat. Lou's eyes widened in surprise. Panicked, he stammered out. I'm weak. I'm powerless. I'm no threat at all. There's no reason for you to waste time eliminating me. But Urek smiled, unfazed. No, that's not it, he replied calmly. We want to form a team with you. Urek's tone turned upbeat as he added, let's play the game. Lou blinked in disbelief. What? From the corner of his vision, he saw another familiar face, Evelyn. Ms. Evelyn, before he could gather his thoughts. Another regular stepped forward angrily, protesting. What are you doing? We got here first. We asked to play a game with him. Don't cut in line. But Evelyn stood her ground, her voice sharp and unwavering. You may have started talking first, but I was the first one to formally request a game. That means I have priority. She then turned to Lou with determination in her eyes. So, Mr. Liu, let's begin the game. As tensions rose, one of the regulars turned to Evelyn, snapping in frustration. Hey, don't be unreasonable. Lou, caught in the middle, panicked and raised his hands defensively. You two, please don't fight. Sensing the disruption, the test supervisor stepped forward. It seems a dispute has arisen. Since both sides make reasonable arguments, and it's unclear who arrived first, we'll let Mr. Liu decides. Liu froze, startled. Me? The supervisor nodded and clarified. Mr. Liu, between the two contestants in front of you, which one would you prefer to play the game with? With his head lowered and voice shaky, Liu replied, I'm sorry to the one who came to me first, but Ms. Evelyn, I want to team up with you. Evelyn blinked in surprise. Mr. Liu? Liu quickly followed up, trying to reassure everyone. Also, I'll keep my hands completely still. I won't move at all. Not that I could copy her anyway. I'm putting my full trust in Ms. Evelyn. Watching the scene unfold, Urek raised an eyebrow and muttered, Wait, you two already knew each other? You made your choice without even a moment of hesitation. But earlier, Evelyn didn't pick him. Evelyn suddenly grew suspicious. She glared at Liu and snapped. Are you feeling guilty and trying to throw the game just to get rid of me? Are you throwing the match? If that's your plan, I won't forgive you. Liu frantically shook his head. Of course not. Without you, Evelyn, I wouldn't have anyone to form a team with. I really want to be your teammate. His voice trembled as he blurted out the truth. It's just that. I like you, Evelyn. Evelyn stared at him, wide-eyed. Urek blinked, unimpressed. Oh. Turning away with a sigh, Urek muttered to himself, Let's retreat. These two are hopeless. Evelyn hesitated, then looked back at Liu seriously. Mr. Liu, I'm from one of the 10 great families. There are a lot of hurdles I'll have to cross before I can even think about marriage. But you're braver than I expected. Liu panicked again. No, I didn't mean I liked you, so we have to get married. But Evelyn smiled gently. I'll stay still too. I trust you, Mr. Liu, and, well, I think I kind of like you now, too. Watching the heartfelt moment unfold, Urek could only sigh in exasperation. We just ended up wasting our time. As the team formation deadline approached, Neo approached Urek with a proposition. Neo told him that he had noticed how Urek hadn't found a teammate easily and suggested they form a team together. Seems like you couldn't find a team easily, Neo said. So why don't you team up with me? Urek looked at him with slight amusement. You? Neo introduced himself confidently. My name is Neo. I may not be as good as you, but I'm strong. Urek raised an eyebrow and responded with a chuckle. Oh, confident are you? He admitted that Neo wasn't necessarily wrong. Urek explained that, aside from that brat, very few people around seemed like a good match. However, he added that he didn't quite trust Neo yet. Neo replied calmly, acknowledging the point. You're quite accurate. I'm not someone trustworthy. But at the very least, I won't get in your way. None of you are my target. As Urek watched him closely, he thought to himself that something about Neo's presence made him feel dizzy the closer he got. Yet, he noticed something strange. He smells the same. Meanwhile, the test supervisor announced to Liu and Evelyn that they were now officially a team. Urek, still observing Neo, noted internally that the scent Neo gave off was the same faint trace of salt that Liu carried. That detail had now sparked Urek's curiosity. He told Neo directly, All right, if you can keep up, that is. Neo nodded respectfully. Thank you. Just then, the test supervisor's voice boomed across the test field, signaling the end of the round. The allotted time is over. The team selection game has come to an end. A total of 10 teams have been formed. All participants who failed to form a team will be eliminated. The supervisor continued with enthusiasm. Congratulations to those who have formed a team. You will all advance to the next test. Urek furrowed his brow and scanned the area. 10 teams. But I only count 9. They're scamming us. The test supervisor thought quietly to herself. The death match inside the waiting area has ended. The 3 survivors will be automatically grouped into a team and proceed to the next test. What an amazing ability. Zahar's princess, the one who uses ice. She gave a satisfied sigh and added that it had been a good thing to plan this type of game in advance, clearly referencing the unpredictable nature of the participants. That crazy bastard. At least the princess managed to catch him off guard and cool him down. The Princess of Zahard confronted the test supervisor directly, her tone sharp with suspicion. She asked whether the rules had been altered at the last minute just for her. The test supervisor denied it. Of course not. We only said you'd be eaten by the goat, but we never mentioned anything about being eliminated. Then, with a sly grin, the supervisor clarified the rules for the trio that had survived outside the team structure. You'll still move on to the next test. However, to do so properly, each of you must directly eliminate one person who advanced under the official rules. You haven't survived fairly. So for now, we'll call you all leftovers. The princess accepted the condition coldly, though her pride was clearly wounded. Fine by me. It's a well-designed rule. But in the next test, I'll make sure to return this humiliation. That man who rejected my offer and dared to disgrace me. I will never forgive him. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the speaker system throughout the facility. Attention to all supervisors in the waiting room. The second test has now officially concluded. At the arena, a total of 30 candidates have advanced without elimination. Supervisors, please prepare to receive the regulars and begin hosting the next phase of the exam. One of the proctors turned to their colleagues and said with a smirk, "This should be interesting. Let's go, supervisors. It's time to receive the regulars." A sleek yacht docked at a floating platform to receive the surviving regulars. One of them exclaimed in awe, remarking that it looked pretty cool. Urek glanced at the vessel and asked aloud whether their next test will be taking place on that ship. Nearby, Rohan spoke excitedly. This was his first time on a ship, and he was thrilled to be in the tower. Suddenly, a booming voice rang out. The test supervisor called all the selected candidates to attention. Other regulars noticed a group standing apart and whispered among themselves. One of them pointed out that, by their demeanor and attire, these were clearly the test supervisors. On the deck of the yacht, the chief test supervisor, Rahab, introduced himself formally. He congratulated the candidates for having completed the challenging earlier rounds and stated that they had been deemed worthy to stand before him today. He urged them to be proud, reminding them that their journey had only begun. Rahab announced, "From now on, you'll be boarding this cruiser-class floating ship to travel across various parts of the testing floor. At your final destination, you will face the ultimate exam. Those who pass will earn the title of true selected candidate, gaining the opportunity to ascend the tower, along with wealth, fame, power, and strength. You'll pursue the truth and walk the path of glory, just like King Zahard and the 10 great families, but you'll do it by your own strength." He then instructed them to collect a boarding ticket at the gate, warning that it will be checked daily at noon, so none should lose it. Another test supervisor called out to the group of regulars, directing them to board in an orderly, one-by-one fashion. As they filed aboard, Urek observed the mix of participants and silently noted that a few of them seemed oddly out of place among the survivors. Rohan couldn't contain himself. He bounced forward, pointing at the impressive ship. It was flashy, modern, and awe-inspiring. Everything he had dreamed a tower vessel would look like. Right as they stepped onto the deck, Supervisor Danzon appeared, booming a greeting. "Welcome aboard the cruiser, selected candidates. My name is Danzon, and I will be the examiner in charge during this next test, called position training, which will take place entirely on board this ship." Once all regulars were aboard the cruiser, Supervisor Danzon announced the rules for the position training period. He explained that each candidate would be assigned a specific position within a team and would face midterm evaluations. Those who ranked at the top in their position would receive benefits, while anyone deemed unranked, regardless of their performance in other exams, would be immediately disqualified. One of the regulars, visibly alarmed, blurted out in shock, "Disqualified? So even if you pass the main exam, you can still be ruled out?" Urek, who was still processing the information, asked plainly, "Position? What is that?" Standing nearby, Neo, who had teamed up with Urek, stepped forward to explain. He clarified that a position was the role each individual takes within a team, each modeled after roles once held by the tower's legendary founders. Scout, one who monitors enemy movements at the front lines and disrupts the battlefield. Light Bearer, the team's rear commander, overseeing tactics and coordination. Spear Bearer, operating with the light bearer to eliminate enemies from a distance. Wave controller, manipulating Shinsu, the source of power, to overwhelm foes with devastating force. Fisherman, specialized in hunting and capturing enemies anywhere. Neo added that there were more specialized roles beyond these five, but these stood as the foundational positions. He teased Urek for being unfamiliar with them, saying it must mean Urek came from a very remote place. Urek merely shrugged and admitted, "Remote place? Well, you could say that." At that moment, Supervisor Danzon strode forward again to introduce the mentors assigned to each position. Wave Controller, Baskerville. Light Bearer, Pudry. Scout, Gisley. Spear Bearer, Heidi. Fisherman, Danzon himself. The crowd reacted with a mixture of amusement and confusion. Some noted that Danzon had enthusiastically proclaimed himself fisherman, with more gusto than he showed for the other roles. One regular joked that his name echoed through the cruiser, while another questioned whether me was actually his name. Once all boarding assignments were confirmed, Supervisor Danzon announced the moment everyone had been waiting for. Individual position placements were ready. He instructed the regulars to check their assignments and then follow their respective mentors for the day's schedule. Danzon paused as he perused Urek's profile and mumbled to himself, noting that Urek appeared to have been assigned the role of fisherman. Nearby, Rohan adjusted his gear and remarked to Urek that he had been assigned as a spear bearer, which meant they'd be working on the same team, but in different positions. Urek grinned and said it was actually a good thing, as it meant they would complement each other instead of competing for the same role. Neo, joining the conversation, confirmed his own role as wave controller. Urek nodded in approval, noting that having distinct roles meant they wouldn't interfere with one another. Rohan echoed his agreement, and Urek rallied them with a confident push. "Let's survive and give it our best." When it was time for the fishermen to gather, Danzon welcomed them aboard with booming enthusiasm. He reminded them that fishermen were considered the pinnacle of the positions, a title that marked them as the strongest among all the selected candidates. He made it clear that weakness would not be tolerated in his group. To prove their worth, Danzon announced an entrance test. Anyone who failed would be disqualified from the cruiser and sent home immediately. A dark-haired regular groaned in frustration, muttering that they had been saddled with a total hard-ass as their mentor. Another blonde regular, clearly unnerved, expressed his expectation for something more benign, like joining a soccer team. Urek, on the other hand, simply replied that it sounded like fun. Danzon practically lunged into action, yelling that it was time to start. The assembled regulars spluttered in confusion. He hadn't even described the test yet, and he was already ordering them to come forward. Unfazed, Danzon waved them on again, repeating his command and adding a frustrated, almost exasperated, "Damn it." At that moment, one of the blonde regulars volunteered to go first, confessing with a grin that he always liked being first at everything. Urek shrugged and told him to do as he pleased. Danzon, standing authoritatively before the assembled regulars, praised the first volunteer as spirited. He instructed the blonde-haired candidate to pick up the harness beside him before entering the testing area. The candidate blinked in confusion as the harness began moving on its own, clearly an unfamiliar device to him. He stumbled awkwardly, summoning frustration over how hard it was to walk while donned in the harness. Danzon snapped at him to hurry. Pulling himself together, the blonde swallowed his embarrassment and approached. Danzon guided him firmly. "Okay, put your hands in like this. Grab there. Good. Just like that, all set." He then directed everyone's attention to the scene. "This is the ready position. While holding the harness, press your upper body forward and stand up. Now the game starts." A nearby regular muttered in disgust, calling it gross. Urek frowned and thought to himself that he truly didn't want to be partnered with that particular blonde. Danzon then addressed the candidate sternly. "Lower your stance and use your legs. Don't stand stiff or arrogant. You'll fall." He warned that if the candidate's back touched the Shinsu-coated floor, that would mean instant failure. From the sidelines, a dark-haired regular watched in awe, noting how the candidate was tossed around like a piece of paper, as expected of a ranker. Another regular couldn't help exclaiming quietly, "The rancor is so strong." Undeterred, Danzon called out again. "All right, next. Is there no one else? Looks like everyone's scared. Fine, I'll give the first three who come up another chance." Urek calmly stepped forward and said, "No, I will." As he did, another regular piped up, "Then I'll go." A blue-haired regular followed. "I'll go too. It's better to try even one more time." Urek chuckled quietly, noting that the opportunity was being postponed again. He glanced toward the dark-haired regular and asked, "You're not going?" The dark-haired man shook his head. "I don't respond to those cookie-cutter ranking systems. I'm allergic to being ranked." Urek nodded in understanding, although his eyes told him that the man found the test strange. From his vantage point, the dark-haired regular quietly thought to himself, "This guy, he's weird." Deep inside the engine room of the cruise, the Princess of Jihad addressed her two subordinates in a hushed but confident tone. She explained that they had successfully infiltrated the vessel without raising suspicion. Their first objective was complete. She reminded them that when they boarded, each regular had been given a boarding ticket. If they managed to steal those tickets and hold onto them past midnight, the ownership would automatically transfer to them. This would allow them to continue participating in the test as if they were rightful candidates. She ordered her allies to split up and locate their targets. "Understood, Princess." The two regulars responded in unison, clearly determined. One of them rallied the group by saying they should all do their best. As the princess walked off, she muttered to herself with burning resolve. Urek Mazino, they said he was assigned as a fisherman, right? Somehow, before the night is over, I'll steal his ticket. Back in the training zone, Danzon barked out in irritation as he watched two regulars fall almost instantly during the test. Both of them were taken out in an instant. It's like their legs were rooted to the ground. Pathetic. Next, Urek, observing nearby, remarked to himself that Danzon seemed overly enthusiastic, perhaps enjoying this far too much. Danzon turned his attention to the blue-haired regular, scolding him. "What are you doing? Why aren't you leaving the field quickly?" The blue-haired regular stammered in response. "Sorry, my foot. I think there's something wrong with it. It won't move." Danzon's expression hardened. "Don't show weakness. Weaklings don't belong here. Get up on your own. Now." Just then, Urek stepped forward and offered his hand to the injured regular. "I'll help you," Urek said calmly, ignoring Danzon's stern glare. Danzon looked at him with surprise. "You?" Urek simply smirked. "Excuse me for a moment," he said gently to the blue-haired regular. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Thank you," the regular replied, regaining his balance. Urek then turned to Danzon. "Shall we give it a try?" Inside, Urek was curious. While this game seemed entertaining, he was more interested in understanding the strange power Danzon had demonstrated earlier. "This game might be fun, but I need to figure out that mysterious power he used before," he thought to himself. Urek smiled slightly and declared, "And since you showed me the power of this place first, I'll show you the power that comes from outside the tower." As the wrestling match began, Danzon watched Urek intensely, thinking to himself that Urek didn't seem trained in Shinsu control, yet the Shinsu around him was clearly reacting to his presence. Urek suddenly let out a laugh and called out, saying he was just copying Danzon and encouraged him to get serious. He taunted Danzon, asking if he was scared. Danzon, clearly rattled, denied being frightened and accused Urek of madness. He then insinuated that Urek seemed more afraid than himself, screaming and raising his arms to muster courage, and ordered him to grasp the Sappa gear immediately. Urek smirked and replied, "All right then," before acknowledging that Danzon had a strong physique for someone his size and expressed hope that this wouldn't turn into a dull match. He challenged Danzon to begin. As the match unfolded, Urek sidestepped deftly, upsetting Danzon's balance and sending him crashing to the ground. Urek looked on in surprise at his own success. A stunned voice from the onlookers exclaimed that the supervisor had been thrown down by the regular, calling it unprecedented. Another regular echoed the shock, emphasizing that the supervisor had been bested. Danzon scrambled to his feet and immediately declared the move invalid. He explained loudly that he had slipped on his own, alleging that he had held back to avoid injuring Urek, but pulled back too much, causing the slip. He insisted it was a perfectly plausible explanation for the fall. One blonde-haired regular shot back, decrying Danzon's claim and stating that it was obvious his leg had been hooked. Another regular lamented Danzon's poor character, noting it matched his disheveled hair. Several others bandied comments that the supervisor simply looked like an extra character with a terrible attitude. One regular summed up their disdain by calling Danzon a sore loser from the old generation who could never admit his own mistakes. Flushed with anger, Danzon screamed at them to shut up. Danzon watched Urek closely. He couldn't help but think something was strange. Urek clearly had no idea how to control Shinsu yet, but somehow the Shinsu around him was responding. Meanwhile, Urek remained calm. He thought to himself that despite Danzon's loud bravado, the man had shown restraint during their match. He had intentionally held back. Urek wanted to see more of that strength. He addressed Danzon again, agreeing that the move was invalid and proposing they retry. He said he didn't want to win by luck anyway. Danzon, still puzzled by Urek's confidence, told him to get ready. This time, Danzon was determined to win by sheer force. He told himself he had underestimated Urek before and wouldn't hold back again. The match restarted. The blonde regular watched with amazement as Urek lifted Danzon off the ground. Urek mocked him playfully, telling him to put in more effort because it was starting to get boring. Then, staring Danzon in the eyes, he asked to see the same power Danzon had displayed at the test field. At the spear bearer position training field, Heidi stood before the gathered regulars and introduced herself with poise, stating that she was the supervisor in charge of the spear bearer position. Her striking presence did not go unnoticed. One regular whispered in awe that she was beautiful. Others murmured that she looked like a doll. With confident authority, Heidi declared that from that day forward, she would be their master for spear bearer training. Their first task, she explained, would be a simple spear-throwing exercise, just a light test to gauge their talent, so they shouldn't feel pressured. Rohan was stunned when he noticed something about her arms. Without hesitation, Heidi wrapped Shinsu around her arm and hurled her spear in a demonstration. The spear soared through the air, covering hundreds of feet before landing perfectly on target. The regulars watched in awe. Awesome, some gasped. How cool, another muttered. Heidi turned back to the group and asked who wanted to try first. A confident blonde female regular raised her hand. I'll go first, she called. Rohan stepped forward, cutting in. No, I'll go first. While others practiced, Lou sat by himself, uncertain and lacking confidence in his own abilities. After lining up, Rohan hurled his spear with force. It landed squarely on target. The crowd of regulars was again impressed. Did you see that? He shouted proudly. The blonde female regular admitted he was pretty good. Another regular nodded in agreement, saying, Awesome. Lou muttered to himself that this was the worst. He lamented that he couldn't even hold the spear properly, despite having promised to do his best. The attempt had been a disaster. Everyone else was throwing the spear much farther, and he wondered why he had been chosen as a regular at all. He questioned his own lack of talent. Just then, Rohan noticed Lou's distress and called out, asking what was wrong and why he was bending over. Lou admitted, embarrassed, that he hadn't managed to throw the spear far enough. Rohan encouraged him, reminding him that it was his first time and he should cheer up. Rohan approached Lou, mentioning that they had met before at the previous test. He remarked that Lou had seemed kind of cool and introduced himself. Lou, flustered, gave his own name. Rohan responded warmly, saying it was nice to meet him. Lou awkwardly returned the greeting. Rohan reassured Lou not to be so hard on himself, reminding him that he had been chosen to be on the team by Rohan's Dongsing Nim, which meant he must have talent. Lou doubted himself again, saying he didn't think he was good at anything. Rohan insisted that he trusted his Dongsing Nim's instincts and was sure Lou would be great. He also expressed his own determination to do well, and although they weren't official teammates, he felt a sense of camaraderie with Lou from the moment he was chosen. Rohan encouraged Lou to do their best together and survive, promising to teach him and showing off his muscles. Lou thought to himself how kind Rohan was and reflected on the warmth of people like Ms. Evelyn. He felt grateful that even a cursed human like himself could find kindness within the tower. Meanwhile, Danzon seethed with anger, muttering to himself about the audacity of a mere regular. He questioned what kind of power was at play. Urek, observing the scene, thought to himself with relief that even in such a dark place, light seemed to find a way through. He felt his strength returning. He then challenged Danzon, asking why he didn't show the power he had used before. Urek warned Danzon that if he didn't use it, he would be humiliated in front of the other regulars. Danzon retorted that if Urek meant increasing the level of Shinsu, he would be happy to demonstrate. Urek sensed the change immediately. Danzon's body was growing harder and heavier, as if turning to stone, and it seemed that some unknown force in the space was making him stronger. Danzon thought to himself that Urek didn't understand the true nature of this power, and that his curiosity would be his downfall. He told Urek directly that he couldn't use this power carelessly at the moment. Urek, intrigued, simply replied, "What?" In the training room, Danzon explained the tower's law. A ranker could not harm a regular without the administrator's consent or a mutual duel agreement. If he used his full power, he risked banishment or death, and Urek, lacking Shinsu resistance, would be cleaved in two instantly. Urek answered with a calm grin. He said Danzon was assuming too much. Even at full strength, the supervisor would not kill him so easily. Danzon refused the provocation, stating he would rather suffer temporary humiliation than lose everything. Seeing no point in further posturing, Danzon proposed a solution. In 3 days, with the administrator's permission, they would meet for a consensual duel. The battlefield would be a secluded space within the next exam, the upcoming crown game, where no one would notice. There, both could fight to the death. Urek admitted the proposal was tempting. Privately, Danzon smirked, believing the naive brat had taken the bait. The supervisor then added one condition. Urek must put him down at once, fall to the floor himself, and concede defeat so the current test could end. Urek questioned the demand, but Danzon sweetened it. If Urek complied, Danzon would cancel the entrance test and pass every regular present. Urek accepted, dropped to the mat, and declared himself beaten. The onlookers gasped in confusion as Urek exaggerated his loss, praising the supervisor's unbeatable strength and joking that Danzon must draw power from his dirty hair. Danzon, inwardly impressed by Urek's seamless acting, announced that the earlier throw counted as skill and that no one had truly failed. All would advance as fishermen. Cheers erupted among the trainees. Quietly, though, Danzon leaned toward Urek and vowed that in 3 days, during the crown game, he would kill him. Urek replied he planned the same. For the first time in ages, Urek thought, someone has challenged me to a genuine life-and-death fight. I'm looking forward to it. As training concluded, the regulars were dismissed to their team quarters. A dark-haired woman, the same fisherman candidate who had collapsed earlier, thanked Urek shyly for his help. Urek's heart raced. He wondered if this was the beginning of his first romance and congratulated himself for joining the tower. Out of earshot, the woman chuckled, blushing at how easily flustered he was. She decided Urek was strong, straightforward, and, most importantly, single. Elsewhere, the Princess of Jihad steeled herself. She reminded herself of her plan. Tonight, I'll steal Urek Mazino's ticket. The stage was set, 3 days until the crown game, and a duel to the death awaited. In the dead of night, the Jihad princess walked quietly, her steps barely making a sound. Suddenly, a voice called out to her. A familiar figure emerged, urgently calling, "Ms. Princess! Ms. Princess!" Startled, the Jihad princess immediately struck at the figure and demanded to know who they were. The figure winced in pain, but quickly responded, saying it was him, the one who had survived with her inside the goat. Realizing who it was, she lowered her guard slightly and warned him to be careful, as they could easily be discovered by others. Apologizing for his carelessness, he insisted that he had something important to tell her. She asked him what it was. He explained that her target seemed to be that man, and then proposed an alliance. He, too, wanted to steal a ticket from one of the others. The princess raised an eyebrow and asked skeptically if she had any reason to cooperate. He responded that he didn't think she needed one. Still, he expressed his wish to team up with her, promising complete loyalty not just until the end of the test, but even beyond it. She considered his words carefully, then replied that she was sorry, but she was quite cautious and very selective about the people she chose to trust. Meanwhile, elsewhere Rohan was marveling at the surroundings, exclaiming how amazing the place was. He excitedly pointed out that with a ticket, all drinks and food were free. Lou agreed with him and added that this must be what people called paradise. Urek approached them with a grin, noting that the two seemed to have become close. Rohan invited Urek to join them, and Urek cheerfully agreed, suggesting they head to their room. Rohan pumped a fist and said it was on, ready to go. Lou's eyes widened in surprise as he took a sip of something fizzy. "Is this a carbonated beverage?" he asked in amazement. Rohan laughed and explained that it was his first time trying it. He assured Lou that the drink would refresh his body and encouraged him to drink more. Lou reacted with delight, describing it as bubbly and strangely invigorating, something he hadn't experienced before. But their fun was short-lived. A sharp voice rang out. Evelyn stormed in, scolding them loudly. "You carbonated beverage addicts. You've been drinking that stuff since day one. Stop teaching my teammate weird things. There's no way those sugary drinks are good for your health." Startled, Urek muttered, "A visitor." Lou stiffened. "And Miss Evelyn." Evelyn folded her arms and glared. She said that when Lou mentioned he was heading to the next room, she was curious, and now she saw him hanging around with bad people doing bad things. She told him she was deeply disappointed in him. "I'm sorry," Lou murmured, bowing his head. Evelyn wasn't done. She scolded him for making friends with their competitors, reminding him that everyone here was an enemy. She shouted for him to repeat after her. "Those bastards are our enemies." Lou, trying to ease the tension, asked how her scout position training had gone. Evelyn paused and repeated, "Miss Evelyn." Urek smirked. "Oh, this lady is on fire." Unbothered, Rohan continued, encouraging Lou to drink. Lou looked nervously at Evelyn and stammered, "And Miss Evelyn, what's happened to you?" The princess's teammate watched the group from a distance, silently observing their lively atmosphere. He noted to himself that they all seemed to be having fun, drinking without restraint, completely unaware of what was about to happen to them. Evelyn, clearly already affected by the drinks, shouted for another one. The teammate narrowed his eyes, forming a plan in his mind. Since the princess would be targeting the silver-haired man, he decided he would steal a ticket from one of the others. Whether the princess liked it or not, she would be forced to ally with him. He was determined to become part of her team, even if it meant resorting to manipulation. In his thoughts, he called out to her, "Princess of Zahard," resolute in his intention to be by her side. Meanwhile, someone asked Evelyn what had happened at the scout training camp. Evelyn, visibly upset, replied that the instructor had made her do the one thing she hated the most. Lu was shocked and demanded to know who would do something like that to her. She answered that it had been the teacher in charge of her position training. Outraged, Lou exclaimed that anyone who forced Miss Evelyn to do something she despised didn't deserve to be called teacher. He asked what, exactly, the teacher had made her do. Evelyn hesitated, then admitted quietly that she had been forced to touch a puppy. Lou echoed the word in disbelief. "A puppy." She went on to explain that once the instructor found out which family Evelyn belonged to, she suggested Evelyn might have talent as an anima. But Evelyn revealed that she hated touching animals. When she told the instructor she didn't want to do it, the woman grew angry and accused her of being unworthy of the Lopabia family name. Repeating her refusal only made things worse. Frustrated, Evelyn shouted for a carbonated beverage, declaring she would drink it and die right then and there. Lou tried to comfort her, expressing sympathy for what she had gone through. But he couldn't help asking if she truly hated dogs. Evelyn clarified that she didn't hate all animals. In fact, she liked the cute ones. Her problem was that she couldn't bear to touch them, because when she did, they got destroyed. Lou, taken aback, softly repeated her name in concern. Just then, Urek turned to Neo, asking how his position test had gone. He told Neo not to just stand around eavesdropping. He wanted to hear the full story. Neo responded that of course Urek had noticed him. Urek replied that he wasn't so oblivious that he wouldn't. Neo finally admitted that the training had gone well. He had been asked to perform a small test, something like what he was about to demonstrate. He raised his hand, and power surged. Lu recoiled in alarm, exclaiming about the intensity of the power. Evelyn, eyes wide, recognized it immediately. Shinsu, she asked. Urek noted that the energy seemed similar to the one used by Supervisor Danzon. Neo confirmed it, though he mentioned that what he had used was far weaker. Urek's eyes lit up with excitement, and he quickly asked Neo to teach him. Evelyn, watching from the side, was growing more concerned. She thought to herself that for an ordinary regular who had just entered the tower, Neo was far from normal. She decided she would need to keep an eye on him. The princess calculated silently to herself. There were still about 4 hours left until the scheduled ticket check at midnight. She reminded herself that she had even purchased insurance. There was no need to panic. She planned to make her move 30 minutes before the check, when everyone would be required to carry their ticket. That would be the perfect moment. Meanwhile, Urek called out enthusiastically now that the area had cleared. Hey, now that everyone's gone, teach me what you did earlier, that Shinsa thing or whatever it was. Neo, however, was more concerned with their surroundings and responded, shouldn't we fix the door first? It's still visible from outside. He then began to explain calmly. Shinsu is the sacred substance that fills this tower. It allows us to rest, eat, and sleep. Though honestly, it frustrates me sometimes. He continued. Anyway, by binding Shinsu into a concentrated space, it can be used in different ways. That space is called a room. Curious, Urek asked, how do you create one? Neo answered, you can either extract the Shinsu that flows through your own body, like I do, drawing out the maximum I can store, or compress the Shinsu from the space around you. But controlling the Shinsu in the environment is a rare talent that only a few possess, and even then, it requires years of training. Urek pressed further. So how do you draw Shinsu from your body? Neo replied confidently. You just imagine it. Imagine. Urek echoed. Neo nodded and elaborated. Yes. Picture a round sphere floating in front of you. Now imagine punching a hole in that sphere and connecting a small tube between it and your body. Through that connection, let the water, the Shinsu, flow from your body into the sphere. That's how you create a room. Now fill it. Fill it. Urek concentrated, frustrated. Nothing's showing up, though. Neo smirked. Of course not. No one gets it right on the first try. But you just learned it today, didn't you? Urek protested. Neo shrugged proudly. I'm a genius, though. Still puzzled, Urek murmured. That's strange. I definitely felt something. Neo replied. It's not something that just happens right away. Most regulars can't manage it in their entire lifetime. Unrelenting, Urek began shouting, fill it, fill it, fill it. Suddenly, a rancor's voice rang out. Danzon, startled, Danzon responded. What? The rancor reported urgently. A massive amount of Shinsu just appeared at the bottom of the cruise ship. Danzon was stunned. He stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend what he was witnessing. Meanwhile, Urek growled in frustration. Nothing is working. Neo calmly reminded him. Because it's not easy to begin with. At that moment, Danzon shout, damn it. It's getting bigger. An announcement blared through the cruise ship's speaker system. To all regulars on board, due to sudden changes in weather along the route, the cruise's course will be drastically altered. Please prepare for impact. Repeat. All regulars, please prepare for impact. Alarmed, Neo asked, what just happened? Urek turned toward the source of the commotion. Seems like something's going on outside. I'll head out and also go to the bathroom. Danzon cursed loudly, demanding to know what had happened and where all the Shinsu had come from. A nearby rancor responded that he had no idea. It had just appeared out of nowhere. Frustrated, Danzon barked out a question, asking for the whereabouts of the general supervisor of testing. The ranker replied that he didn't know. The supervisor hadn't mentioned where he was going. He had simply left. Danzon gritted his teeth, thinking to himself that the man had probably gone to the castle again. He growled that they had to find a way to stop the situation before the cruiser became stranded. Without delay, he ordered the supervisor of the wave controller position to be summoned. The ranker acknowledged the command and hurried off. Danzon muttered to himself that in all his years as a ranker, he had never seen Shinsu glowing like that. Suddenly, he heard something, or at least thought he did. A strange, disembodied voice whispered insults. Dirty hair. Danzon blinked, confused. Huh? What was that? Then another voice followed. Ugly. His eyes widened as he whispered in disbelief that he could hear the Shinsu speaking. He concluded that he must be hallucinating. Another voice called out again. Minor character. To his horror, he saw the Shinsu continuing to grow in size and intensity. Elsewhere, Lu panicked and asked what the hell was happening. He wondered aloud if the ship was going to sink at this rate. Meanwhile, the princess's teammate watched the growing chaos, thinking to himself that he had no idea what had triggered the disturbance. All he knew was that the irritating woman from one of the 10 great families had fallen asleep and been taken to her room, leaving the other two alone. He saw the entire situation as a golden opportunity. Though he couldn't fully grasp what was going on, it was clear that everyone was panicking, and he decided this was his moment. It's now or never, he thought. Just then, Rohan shouted to Lu to watch out. He sensed danger and grabbed Lu, narrowly dodging an attack. Rohan quickly demanded to know who the attacker was, while Lu asked if Rohan was all right. The princess's teammate clicked his tongue and muttered that he had missed hitting a vital point. In his thoughts, he acknowledged that his ultimate goal was the muscular guy on the silver-haired one's team. But for now, he needed a ticket, any ticket. He decided it was best to go after the weakest prey first. Back inside the cruise, Urek stumbled slightly as the floor began to shake and the lights flickered. He muttered that this was a hassle. He still couldn't form that Shinsu Power Neo had explained, and now he was starting to feel dizzy. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out. Urek! The Jihad princess burst into the men's bathroom, shouting his name. Urek turned to see her and exclaimed in shock, asking what she was doing there. He reminded her, loudly, that it was the men's bathroom. She replied dryly that yes, it was the men's bathroom, and that was precisely why he was in it. Urek groaned in exasperation and asked why the girls in this manhwa always had to kick down doors. Then, jokingly, he asked if she was trying to ask him out on a date and had followed him inside for that reason. The princess coldly stated that wasn't it at all. She was there to take his ticket. Urek was caught off guard. What? She explained that the supervisor had told her she could retake the test if she took his ticket. Holding up the ticket, Urek asked if she meant this one. She confirmed it. He admitted that something had felt strange about her and her team since they boarded the cruise, but asked if it really had to be his ticket. She replied nonchalantly that either ticket would do, so Urek asked why she had picked him specifically. The princess repeated herself. Either one was fine. Suspicious, Urek narrowed his eyes and asked if she was a stalker. She rolled her eyes and told him to stop dreaming. Urek reminded her that he was very strong and said he hoped they could both pass the test. He then suggested she find someone else and started to walk away. But the princess stepped forward and declared that she would take his ticket regardless. Whether teammate or prey, she said, you always had to go after the strongest. Urek let out a long sigh, muttering that things were getting complicated. For a gentleman like himself, fighting a woman felt improper, but if she insisted on a duel, he said he would accept. Elsewhere, Neo noticed the rumbling and quakes outside and asked aloud what was going on. Evelyn groaned and called out to Lu, complaining that she was thirsty and needed some water. She repeated his name several times, but got no response. Lu, clearly alarmed, looked around and muttered in disbelief that the person attacking them had already failed the previous test. Something wasn't right. Rohan reacted with confusion and frustration, asking if they were seeing a ghost. He demanded to know why they were being attacked and what the attacker's motive was. The princess's teammates scoffed and snapped that he didn't owe them any explanations. He launched a sudden attack. Rohan shouted Lu's name in warning, but the blast struck him before they could evade. Watching them, the princess's teammates sneered, observing that it looked like the two were actually helping each other. Evelyn narrowed her eyes and pointed at the attacker. She said she was pretty sure he had been eaten by a goat during the previous test. She asked how he had managed to crawl back out of the goat's stomach. The princess's teammates stared at her in disbelief. He exclaimed her name, Miss Evelyn, and reminded her that she had passed out drunk just moments ago for drinking alcohol. Evelyn looked confused and denied it. She asked why she would drink something so harmful to her body. He insisted that he had clearly seen her being carried on Lu's back, completely out of her senses. Evelyn coolly clarified that she hadn't been drinking alcohol, only soda. "Who gets drunk from soda?" she asked. She then revealed that the whole act had been a performance, pure acting. Lu was stunned. "What? Acting?" Evelyn smirked and added that if she had gotten drunk at all, it wouldn't have been from alcohol or soda. Maybe, she teased, it was the scent of Mr. Lu, who had carried her so gently on his back. Lu froze. "Miss Evelyn." Rohan gagged in the background and groaned that he was going to be sick. Without warning, Evelyn flicked her fingers and Rohan screamed, clutching his eyes in pain. Evelyn turned her attention back to the attacker. She declared that, regardless of how he escaped the goat's stomach, she would never forgive him for bullying Mr. Lu. The princess's teammates scoffed and asked what she intended to do if she didn't forgive him. Before he could react, Evelyn struck with lightning speed, sending him flying. She shouted furiously, asking if he still didn't understand the situation. Did he think he was in a place where he'd receive a warm hug from his mother? No, this wasn't that kind of world. This was her tower. She asked if it looked like a place that welcomed weakness or mercy. Then she warned him, if he touched something that belonged to someone else, he was as good as dead. The princess's teammate cursed her, calling her full of nonsense. Evelyn shot back that the only thing truly small in this room was his talent. "Idiot," she spat. With a final burst of fury, she punched him across the face and followed up with a rapid series of blows, fists, and kicks, sending him flying into a wall. He collapsed, bloodied and barely conscious. Lu called her name in awe. Rohan, watching from behind cover, muttered in amazement that she really was someone from one of the 10 great families. A crackling announcement echoed from the cruise ship's speaker system. "Attention, regulars. We will now begin checking the tickets of those on board. Please ensure you have your ticket with you. This boarding ticket check will continue for the next 10 minutes, starting now." As the announcement played, a grotesque, ghost-like creature began prowling the halls, demanding to see the regulars' tickets. Any who failed to present a valid ticket were devoured on the spot. The creature, acting as a ticket inspector, roared at each regular it encountered, threatening to eat them if they couldn't prove their right to remain on board. Elsewhere, the Jihad princess lunged forward with her sword. Urek barely dodged the swing. She reset her stance and prepared another attack. This time, she thrust her blade toward him with quick precision, but he ducked low to avoid it. She followed with a wide, powerful slash, aiming to finish the fight quickly. Urek thought to himself that she had introduced herself as a princess of Zahard. From the way she moved, it was clear she was unlike the other regulars. Her skill level was far superior. Catching his breath between dodges, Urek called out, asking if it was true that she was the daughter of the man people called the king of the tower. The princess replied coolly that while she wasn't his biological daughter, her connection to King Zahard was real. Urek asked what she meant by that. She explained that King Zahard was more like a foster father. The Zahard family selected the most talented girls in the tower and granted them the title of Princess of Zahard. These chosen girls were empowered by the king himself to climb the tower. It was, she said, a complicated arrangement. She added sharply that he clearly didn't know much about the princesses of Zahard, implying that he must be an idiot. Urek responded that when it came to the tower, he probably was an idiot, but only in that regard. Then, smiling, he proposed a deal. If he won their fight, he asked her to leave him alone and grant him one favor. As he dodged another of her sword strikes, she managed, without him noticing, to steal his ticket. She paused, and repeated his request with a hint of suspicion. A favor? Urek nodded and said it wasn't a difficult one. He just wanted her to let him meet the man they called the king of the tower. The princess looked at him gravely and said that what he was asking for was, in fact, the hardest thing in the tower. Even for a princess of Zahard, meeting the king wasn't something easily done. Urek looked confused. But he's your father. She clarified that only the princesses who possessed one of the 13 months were granted the right to meet the king in person. Urek asked what the 13 months were. She explained that they were weapons, 13 of them in total, each personally bestowed by King Zahard himself. A princess who received one of the 13 months would earn the right to meet the king. She then revealed her goal. She was climbing the tower to obtain one of the weapons, meet King Zahard, and kill him. Urek, amused, remarked that it sounded like something straight out of the beginning of a story. The princess growled at him to shut up. Grinning, Urek proposed a new deal. He would help her get one of the 13 months. In return, she would let him meet King Zahard. If the king turned out to be a bad guy, he said he'd help her kill him. The princess scoffed at him and called it nonsense. A loud announcement rang from the cruise ship's speaker system. Attention, regulars. We will now begin checking the tickets of those on board. Please make sure you have your ticket with you. The boarding ticket check will continue for the next 10 minutes, starting now. Hearing the announcement, the Jihad princess muttered that it was finally time to put her plan into action. She called out to Urek, pointing at a ticket on the floor, and asked if that wasn't his. Startled, Urek turned and spotted the ticket. He rushed to grab it, confused about when it had fallen. But the princess quickly corrected him. She said that the ticket he picked up was a fake. The real ticket was in her possession. Shocked, Urek asked what she meant. She explained that she had stolen that other ticket from a different regular aboard the cruise, long before she ever met him. She had intentionally dropped it to mislead him into believing it was his own. The only ticket she cared about, she said with a smirk, was his. Urek was stunned and asked if she had really tricked him. She confirmed it proudly, stating that the boarding staff would be there any minute. As long as she had his ticket when they arrived, her plan would be a success. Panicked, Urek asked what she was doing as she slipped the ticket somewhere unexpected. He demanded to know why she was putting it there. She taunted him, daring him to take it back. Take it if you can, virgin, she teased. Urek growled in frustration and shouted that he would get it back. She couldn't seriously think he was incapable of doing it. She threatened that if he tried, she'd report him as a pervert. He shouted back, calling her an idiot, and asked what she expected him to do. She smirked and told him to try and take it from her, if he could. Then her expression turned serious. She told him that she was going to prove just how naive his words had been. Speaking so casually about killing King Zahard was something no one should say lightly in front of someone who truly meant it. Urek's expression changed as he sensed something shift. He noted internally that there was a sudden change in the environment. Something dark and heavy was entering the princess. At that moment, the ghostly creature, still conducting ticket checks, appeared before them. It demanded to see their tickets. The princess, startled, asked what the creature was. Urek echoed her confusion, realizing that this was bad. The ghost repeated its command, voice rising in volume and anger. You too. Those tickets are not yours. No free ride. The princess tried to reason with it, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Urek said he understood and assured her he would get his ticket back soon. The princess protested again, saying she was pretty sure she had permission from the supervisor. But the ghost was relentless. No free ride. No free ride. It kept repeating, then began shouting, illegal, illegal, illegal. With rising intensity, the ghost declared its sentence. For that crime, I will devour them. Death penalty to the regulars who boarded without a ticket. Urek glanced at the princess and asked if the creature seriously intended to fight them. Seeing no other way out, both he and the princess braced themselves and, in unison, thanked the ghost for giving them an excuse to fight. Meanwhile, on another part of the ship, Danzon was growing more desperate. He shouted to his team, demanding to know the whereabouts of the wave controller's position master. One of the rankers responded apologetically that they had searched everywhere, but couldn't find him. He promised they would continue the search. Out beyond the ship's deck, Supervisor Rahab stood still, wide-eyed. He wondered aloud what the massive Shinsu presence behind the cruise was. It was enormous, almost alive. His mind raced as he tried to piece things together. What had happened in his absence? Who could have possibly created a Shinsu mass that size? Elsewhere, Chongyam cursed under his breath, wondering where he had gone. The man had truly vanished. A voice buzzed from his pocket, reminding Chongyam that he had been told to ensure the target was dead. Chongyam warned that Rahab would discover everything soon. The voice from the pocket asked what they would do if the one who devoured the light reached the regulars. Chongyam told it to stop with the ominous talk. He said they'd find the man and kill him before anything else happened. He added that he was already tracking the scent of blood. Chief Supervisor Rahab confronted Danzon with a harsh tone, demanding to know how such a situation had occurred. Danzon, flustered, addressed him formally and admitted he didn't know. He explained that an enormous mass of Shinsu had suddenly materialized without warning. Rahab narrowed his eyes and repeated the words suddenly, with suspicion, then thought to himself that something was off. Shinsu of that magnitude couldn't simply appear for no reason. Without hesitation, Rahab took command, instructing Danzon to have everyone stand back while he handled it. Danzon quickly acknowledged the order with urgency. Surrounded by a black and purple aura of Shinsu, Rahab prepared to neutralize the golden Shinsu. He launched a massive blast toward it, but it had no effect. Gritting his teeth, he unleashed a relentless barrage of Shinsu attacks, each one more powerful than the last. Finally, the golden glow seemed to flicker and vanish. Danzon cried out in awe, exclaiming that it had disappeared. He marveled at the general supervisor's strength. But Rahab, still tense, muttered that there was no way a Shinsu source of that level could have appeared randomly. Something deeper was at work. Inside the cruise ship, the ghost-like creature continued its rampage. It roared at Urek and the Jihad princess, accusing them of arrogance and daring to act boldly after committing what it called a crime. It shouted that the punishment was death, and charged. As rocks flew toward them, the princess kicked them away and began to chant an incantation, calling forth her weapon. I pick you, lip. I am the merciful, empty vessel. You who sail the tides of the lost. Let yourself be carried away by this empty vessel downstream. From the 16th Lake Water Ferry. As she finished, she was enveloped in swirling ice and water. Her aura exploded outward in a burst of elemental force, and she unleashed it all toward the ghost creature, shattering it completely. Urek watched, impressed. He thought to himself that she was truly an interesting girl. But his awe was cut short. He noticed the creature beginning to reform. He shouted that it was coming back to life. Without waiting, he charged forward and began punching and kicking the creature, but to no avail. Frustrated, he complained that his attacks weren't working. The ghost creature sneered and declared that it was a ghost doll filled with Shinsu, created by the workshop. It told them that regulars who couldn't properly manipulate Shinsu had no hope of harming it. Urek growled that everything was always about Shinsu. He muttered that he felt sorry for people who couldn't use it. He admitted to himself that if he used his shining power, he might be able to defeat the ghost, but he didn't want to reveal that here. Instead, he decided to give Shinsu control another try. He recalled the method: create a bong and fill it up. Back outside, the golden Shinsu reappeared with greater intensity, bursting into view and continuing to grow. Rahab shouted in disbelief that it had returned. Danzon echoed him in panic, asking what they were supposed to do. Rahab growled that the force dared to defy his authority, right within his own domain. Inside the ship, Rohan yelled in confusion, wondering what was going on again. Urek grumbled, complaining that whoever was driving the ship must be insane. The turbulence was making him dizzy. The princess launched another attack, but the ghost creature blocked it and told her it was useless. With a powerful counter, the creature formed a massive Shinsu fist and slammed her into the wall. She tried to defend with her sword but was overwhelmed by the force. The ghost then warned them that if they didn't bring their tickets within the next 30 minutes, they would fail the test, and that he would gladly devour them all. The princess, clearly frustrated, shouted that this was exactly why dealing with stubborn management was the worst. She explained, again, that she had followed the test supervisor's advice and obtained the ticket through her own skill. She demanded to know how many times she had to repeat herself. "Listen to what people are saying, idiot," she shouted. Shinsu energy surged around her once more, and glowing Shinsu flowers began blooming in the air around her. Urek stared in amazement. "What is that?" he asked aloud. The ghost creature flinched and demanded to know who she was and why the environment had suddenly changed. Urek narrowed his eyes and thought to himself that the woman had grown even stronger. The Jihad princess continued her incantation, her voice steady and commanding. She declared that the water flowing from the river had turned red, like blood. With her chant complete, she unleashed a powerful wave of attacks. The ghost creature recoiled, howling that she had actually cut it. It stared at her, stunned. It muttered in disbelief, trying to process how a newly arrived regular could possibly have such power. Then it paused, suddenly realizing something. It acknowledged her complaint and stated it now understood. It would take care of it immediately. The creature revealed that the princess had been given a mission by the test supervisor. However, the ticket she currently possessed was not the correct one. The ticket she needed was the one held by the silver-haired boy, Urek. The first ticket she had stolen from another regular had, by the tower's logic, become hers the moment she took it. Therefore, if she and Urek exchanged tickets, both would pass. But the princess didn't wait for the ghost to finish. With a flash of steel, she slashed it with her blade and told it bluntly that was what it should have said 5 minutes ago. She then turned her blade toward Urek, locking eyes with him. Calm but firm, she said it was time to settle things. She demanded that he hand over the ticket. Urek suggested they just exchange tickets peacefully. The princess rejected the idea flatly. She declared that Urek would lose his ticket, she would take it, keep hers, and he would fail. She reminded him that she had called him her prey from the very beginning. Urek lunged at her, attempting to strike, but she countered swiftly. As she aimed to cut him down, he caught her blade with his bare hand. She responded by releasing a surge of Shinsu, forcing him to jump away. Her next attack slammed into the ground, cracking the floor. Urek stepped back, frustrated. First that guy, and now her. They both knew how to use Shinsu. He questioned aloud whether he was truly the only one who couldn't use it properly. The princess shouted for him to shut up. Urek began analyzing the situation. He noted that the power she was using wasn't ordinary. It likely had a time limit. But if they waited for it to end, they'd miss the chance to exchange tickets. That was a problem. Even so, he didn't feel right using his full strength against her. So, he resolved to continue trying to use Shinsu until the very end. He focused and began gathering Shinsu in his palms, recalling Neo's instructions to create a bong and fill it. Meanwhile, outside the cruise ship, Danzon cried out to the general supervisor, reporting that the golden Shinsu hadn't disappeared. It had returned and was growing even larger than before. Rahab's eyes widened as he watched the massive golden glow reignite and expand. Danzon shouted again. The golden Shinsu was heading directly toward the cruise ship. Rahab narrowed his eyes and tried to trace its direction. What part of the ship is it targeting? He wondered. Back inside, Urek suddenly shouted with excitement. He had done it. He had successfully gathered Shinsu. It's Shinsu. I'm finally using Shinsu too, he exclaimed. The princess congratulated him, but quickly questioned whether it was wise to keep drawing it in so wildly. Urek hesitated, asking what was wrong. Then, with a shrug, he shouted that he didn't care anymore. Both of them rushed forward, preparing to clash once again. Outside the ship, Chief Supervisor Rahab's gaze followed the golden Shinsu as it surged through the air. How insolent, he thought. He declared that no human, animal, plant, or even surrounding Shinsu had the right to disobey his will. Danzon panicked. He warned that if Rahab attacked at full force, the cruise ship would be destroyed. Back inside, just as the princess and Urek prepared to strike each other, They were both struck by a sudden wave of black and purple Shinsu. Reacting quickly, both redirected their attacks toward the new threat. Urek turned and called out in confusion, asking what was going on. Chief Supervisor Rahab addressed him coldly, asking if the golden Shinsu had been heading toward Urek specifically. Urek responded with a shrug. I guess so. Why? If you have a complaint, come down here. Chief Supervisor Rahab hovered in the air and responded to Urek's earlier taunt with an icy tone. He told him that coming down wasn't an option because they simply weren't on the same level. Hearing this, both Urek and the princess exchanged confused glances and asked what he had just said. Rahab clarified that Urek was a regular, while he was a ranker and also the general test supervisor. If Urek wanted to pass, he said he needed to follow the rules. Urek frowned. Provoking the man clearly didn't work. He thought to himself that this overdramatic guy, probably suffering from some serious chinibyu, seemed to be the strongest person here. It was unfortunate. Now the question was, how could he get him to come down? Suddenly, the golden Shinsu that had been quiet for a moment surged once again and began spreading rapidly. Urek blinked in surprise. Again, he muttered. Danzon shouted up at Rahab in a panic, announcing that the Shinsu had returned to the cruise ship. Urek stared at the glowing waves, asking himself how it was being controlled. He wondered aloud if it was reacting like this because of his failed attempts. At this rate, the entire cruiser could be in danger. Rahab scowled, realizing Urek didn't even know how to control the Shinsu properly. What an arrogant and reckless idiot, he thought. Without hesitation, Rahab unleashed his black and purple Shinsu, covering the golden light with overwhelming force. Urek noticed the glow fading. He thought to himself that the power Rahab was using looked awfully similar to those who devoured the light. The golden Shinsu was now vanishing. From above, Rahab kept pouring pressure onto the fading energy. He told Urek that no matter how great his talent might be, if he couldn't control it, it was meaningless. He was nothing more than a novice here. Urek narrowed his eyes. Why does this guy's power resemble those connected to Phantaminum? He wondered. If Rahab was somehow involved with that, then this wasn't a game anymore. He'd stop standing by and start taking it seriously. Just then, Rahab's voice came through a communication device in his pocket. He addressed the princess directly, telling her there was little time left to verify the tickets. He asked what she would do. She turned to Urek and, without emotion, told him they should exchange tickets. There was no other option. Urek asked if she was being serious. She clarified that this didn't mean she was aligning herself with him. In fact, she fully intended to make him fail the next test. Urek accepted that. He smiled and said that, one way or another, he'd get her on his side and use her to meet this Zahar guy. Let's do our best, he added with a grin. Later, Urek finally returned to his room. Relieved the ordeal with the princess was behind him. Neo noticed his expression and asked what had happened. You look unusually serious, he said. Then, narrowing his eyes suspiciously, he asked if Urek was constipated. Urek shouted back immediately that he was not. I went to the bathroom just fine. No problems. I can definitely do that without issue, he insisted. Then, trying to change the subject, he asked Neo how to learn more about Shinsu. Specifically, he wanted to know how to control it better than guys like the general supervisor. Neo asked casually what had happened with Rahab. Urek brushed it off, saying not much. Neo advised him to avoid conflict with the supervisor as much as possible. Be careful, he warned. Urek tilted his head. You talk like you know him. Neo replied flatly. Of course I do. He's the general test supervisor. He then added that if Urek truly wanted to control Shinsu well, he'd need the right teacher. And, as it happened, there was someone on this cruise who was the best at it, aside from the general supervisor. Urek perked up. Teacher. The next day, training camp for the wave controller position. The wave controller supervisor greeted the gathered trainees. He announced that the day's lesson would continue from the previous session. They would keep practicing how to form a bomb. Then his eyes fell on Urek. You, Urek Mazino? He asked. You don't belong to the wave controller position, do you? Urek answered confidently that he was a fisherman. The supervisor looked baffled. A fisherman? Why is a fisherman here? Urek replied that he had nothing left to learn from the dirty-haired guy, and so he came to learn something new. Meanwhile, fisherman position training camp. Danzon exploded in anger when he heard what had happened. What did you just say? My apprentice is where? He lost it. I'll kill you, Urek Mazino. The Jihad princess groaned. I can't believe I've been assigned to this guy's position, she muttered. It's going to be so loud. Evelyn stood firm, refusing the instructor's demand. She shouted that she didn't want to touch the animal in front of her. Supervisor Gisley's patience snapped. She yelled back, asking why she was refusing when she had inherited the best lineage for the role. She had the blood of the low Pabia family, one of the finest for an anima. Was she going to waste that talent like some miserable wretch? Evelyn shot back that she didn't care about talent. She simply didn't want to do it. She didn't like it and wouldn't touch any animal, no matter what anyone said. Gisley insisted that as the daughter of a low Pabia branch leader, she must have potential. He extended his hand and urged her again, but Evelyn pulled away, shouting that she didn't want to. He tried to reason with her, saying that she might hate it at first, but if she kept trying, "Don't do it," she cried, panicking. But her hand had already made contact. The dog's eyes suddenly turned blood red. Both Evelyn and the supervisor were stunned. In an instant, the puppy lunged, not at Evelyn, but at Gisley. When it collapsed moments later, it lay bleeding on the ground. Gisley was frozen in shock. What the hell, he muttered. Evelyn stood, trembling, eyes wide with horror. Then she burst into tears, turned, and left the class. Later, as she walked away in silence, Lou ran up to her. Miss Evelyn, how was your position training today? He asked brightly. She didn't meet his eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Lou. I'm just a little tired, she murmured. Lou blinked, confused. Miss Evelyn, what happened to her? He asked aloud. Rohan, nearby, gave him a knowing look. He told Lou that sometimes it was better to leave someone alone. Lou frowned. Is that so? Still, I'm worried. I want to help her. Lighthouse Bearer Camp. The lighthouse supervisor praised one of the regulars, noting their remarkable talent. Spear Bearer Camp. Lou hurled his spear with confidence. It hit the target dead center. He cheered, I did it. Scout Position Camp. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat off by herself, still deeply affected by what had happened the day before. Fisherman Position Camp. Danzon bellowed in frustration as he announced the results of a training match. Game over. Victory goes to Miss Princess. Wave Controller Camp. At the same time, Urek was showing off his progress. A bright burst of Shinsu erupted from his body. The whole class stared in awe. Huh, I did it, Urek shouted proudly. Neo gaped. This is ridiculous. 2 days ago, he couldn't even form a bong. How is this possible? Suddenly, Urek's Shinsu surged out of control and exploded. The wave controller supervisor immediately stepped in, suppressing the burst with practice control. He looked at Urek and said bluntly that his power was incredible for a regular, but his control was non-existent. I know, Urek replied, exasperated. It's so frustrating. The supervisor paused, then offered calmly, I think I could teach you. That is, I could show you how to properly use your power. Urek's eyes lit up. Are you serious? Mr. Dog, the supervisor replied, call me Puppy. I'm not married yet. Urek laughed. Oh, is that so? Thanks, Mr. Woof Woof. I said Puppy. The supervisor corrected with a sigh. Watching from the sidelines, Neo thought to himself that Urek truly was someone loved by the Shinsu. The cruise ship speakers rang out with a message. Attention, regulars. Our cruiser will arrive at the next test site tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please report to the cruise lobby at that time. I repeat, we will arrive at 9 a.m. On the way to training, Urek called out to the princess. She turned and coldly warned him to be prepared to fail the next test. Urek smirked. Same to you. Danzon stormed into the office and stared at the test documents in disbelief. What? This isn't what we were told before? Supervisor General. Chief Supervisor Rahab sat calmly at his desk and replied that it wasn't much different. He'd merely increased the difficulty slightly. Danzon's voice rose. The boss is the queen of the dolphins, the creators of Net. You need a team of rankers just to deal with her. She's a monster. Rahab glanced up. Do you have a problem with that? Danzon's confidence withered instantly. No, sir. How could I? But inside, he was panicking. What the hell is this lunatic planning? He thought. The boss for the next test is the Queen of the Dolphins? Is he trying to kill all the regulars? In a vast, crater-ridden landscape, a colossal creature stepped forward. Each footstep shook the ground. The Queen of the Dolphins approached the test arena. She bent down and reached toward the crown, claiming her position as the test's final obstacle. Urek stepped out of the shower just as a message popped up on his pocket device. It was from Danzon. He read it and laughed. What the hell, Danzon? You adorable bastard. Is this a love letter? He grinned to himself. Tomorrow's test is going to be fun. My first battle against a rancor, how exciting. Somewhere far from the ship, waves crashed softly against the shore. A bruised, bloody figure washed up onto the sand, unmoving. Urek was sprinting through the ship's hallway, energized and focused. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with another regular. He stopped short and asked if she was okay. The blue-haired girl smiled brightly and handed him a drink. She told him she was fine and that he should take it. Caught off guard, Urek asked if she was really giving it to him. She nodded and said he'd been working hard since the morning and deserved it. Urek gratefully accepted, saying he wasn't the type who could relax unless he worked out first thing in the morning. She responded enthusiastically, telling him she thought he was amazing and that it was wonderful to see someone with such discipline. Urek blinked. Really? Is that so? She gave him a flustered look and confessed loudly that she liked guys who worked out, then immediately turned and ran off, screaming, "How embarrassing!" Urek stood there, dazed and confused by what had just happened. From nearby, another regular, wearing glasses, watched them, his expression darkening with jealousy. How dare he to receive a drink from Mizaru, the regular muttered. I won't forgive him. As Urek continued running, he stopped in shock when he saw a penguin waddling on deck. A penguin? He exclaimed. The penguin turned and snapped back. Who are you? Urek gasped. He spoke. A talking penguin? The penguin charged at him angrily. How rude, the penguin shouted. I'm a regular, just like you. Urek blinked again. Are you serious? Even a penguin can be irregular. The penguin explained that if a talking crocodile could be one, there was no reason a penguin couldn't. He added that he had been sunbathing and told Urek to move along. Urek watched him waddle away and thought, how cute. There really are all kinds of strange beings in the tower, he murmured. Moments later, Urek spotted another regular lying near an air duct. Curious, he approached. What are you watching? He asked. The bespectacled regular replied without turning. Anime. I was controlling 3 lighthouses and suddenly felt the urge to watch something. This one's called The Supreme King is the Strongest. It's adapted from a popular webtoon. Don't you know it? Urek internally groaned at the title. How can anyone know a webtoon with such an embarrassing name? The regular turned the screen toward Urek proudly. Urek's inner monologue continued. The name of that attack. It's so old-fashioned. How can he say that with a straight face? You thought the name of the technique was the most shameful in history, didn't you? The regular snapped. Urek panicked. No, you thought I was an otaku, right? Urek hesitated, then shouted. That's right. You also thought, so the Pobidov family reads uncivilized manhwas too? Wait, what does this have to do with the Pobidov family? Urek asked. Suddenly, a loud announcement blared through the ship. Attention, all regulars. We will soon arrive at the next test site. All regulars, please gather in the lobby. At the lobby, a cheerful voice greeted them. Good morning, regulars. I'm Baskerville, the master of the wave controller position, the man declared. I'll be overseeing today's test. He went on to explain that the regulars would soon disembark from the cruiser and participate in a team-based game in the underground space below. Then came the twist. The game you'll be playing is the Crown Game. Urek blinked. Crown Game. Neo, standing nearby, nodded. Ah, so it's the Crown Game. Rowan turned to him. You know it. Neo explained that the Crown Game was an ancient competition once played by King Zahard and the leaders of the 10 great families to determine who would lead during their tower ascent. The rule was simple: fight for the crown. Only the last one standing would win. Baskerville added that the full rules would be revealed once they arrived at the test site. He then instructed everyone to prepare for disembarkation. Above them, Danzon watched silently as Urek readied himself for the upcoming test. Urek looked up, smirked, and thought to himself, "What a cute bastard. You want to fight that badly, huh?" Rohan peered down into the misty descent and asked uncertainly if this was really where they had to go. Baskerville, standing at the edge, welcomed the regulars to the testing arena. He explained that they were now in the 7th arena of the testing floor, the habitat of the net dolphins. The island was home to the dolphins themselves, alongside other creatures, some that preyed on them, and others that coexisted peacefully. He told them that all relevant data about these creatures had been sent to their pockets and encouraged them to check it. Then he got to the main point. Holding up the object, he introduced the crown and pointed to the throne located in the center of the arena. The rules were simple: find the crown, wear it, and sit on the throne. Once seated with the crown, a timer would begin. If another team managed to steal the crown and take the throne, the timer for the previous team would stop. The 5 teams with the most accumulated time would advance to the next test. In the case of a tie, both teams would pass. However, the team that possessed the throne and the crown at the final moment would be declared the overall winner and would advance regardless of accumulated time. The competition would end at 7 p.m., giving the participants 9 hours. If you have any more questions, Baskerville added with a grin, go down there and experience it for yourselves. Observation room. Among supervisors. Supervisor Gisley voiced her concern. Do you really think this game is safe? The crown game is usually done indoors. Net dolphins might be harmless, but if a shinhu like a bull appears, or worse, if the queen of the dolphins gets angry. The spear-bearer's supervisor reassured her, saying the general supervisor must have considered that. The dangerous creatures had surely been kept out of the arena, and the queen's territory was far away from the throne room. Still uneasy, Gisley muttered that she didn't fully trust the general supervisor. The spear-bearer's supervisor admitted that Rahab's reputation wasn't great due to the rumors, but insisted he wasn't insane enough to allow something truly dangerous. By the way, Gisley asked, where's Danzon? Just then, the lighthouse supervisor chimed in. He had used the lighthouse to scan for the crown's location. It's in the center of the queen of the dolphins' territory. The supervisors froze. They screamed together. The general supervisor is crazy. Rohan wiped his brow. This place is so humid. I'm soaking wet. Hey, did either of you bring an extra pair of socks? A nearby regular laughed and replied that he wouldn't lend socks even if he had them, because Rohan's feet stank. How cruel! We're on the same team. Rohan protested. Good luck, fool, the regular shouted as he ran off. It's you who must do well, fool. Rohan snapped back. Suddenly, an announcement echoed throughout the arena. The crown game has begun. From this moment on, combat is permitted, even to the death. A group of regulars launched a surprise attack on Urek's team. With Neo's help, Urek quickly countered and stopped them. Enough blood has already been spilled, Urek said firmly. Leave now while you still can. The opposing team, terrified, turned and fled. Neo reminded them that from now on, everyone else was their enemy. Fortunately, they were far enough away from the other teams. Urek nodded. I guess so. Understood, said Rohan. I'll be careful. Evelyn asked her teammates what their next move should be. Lou suggested that first, they find the crown, and then head straight for the throne to secure time. But Evelyn disagreed. She proposed a different plan. One she called the dirty, dirty plan. After finding the crown, they wouldn't head to the throne right away. Instead, they'd keep moving around the arena and wait until the final moments to appear and claim the throne. That way, they could become the overall winners without having to compete for time. All the other teams will be eliminated, she said confidently. An older regular watching them from nearby smiled to himself. These two are so cute, he thought. Lou nodded. Well, let's hurry and find the crown. But Evelyn pointed out a problem. They didn't have a lighthouse bearer on their team. That meant their chances of finding the crown first were practically non-existent. It's as slim as the sugar content in a zero-calorie soda, she groaned. Don't be too upset, Miss Evelyn, Lou said supportively. So cute, thought Sancho. He then proposed a solution. They would follow a team that had a competent lighthouse bearer. Since those teams would find the crown first, they'd wait, then intercept and steal the crown, and carry out Evelyn's plan from there. Evelyn praised the idea and called Sancho a genius, even if, she admitted, it was an obvious plan. Lou expressed concern that a lighthouse bearer might spot them easily if they followed too closely. But Sancho reassured him. He reminded them that he and Evelyn were both scouts. They would use observers to hide their movements. Lou just needed to stay a bit behind and have his spear ready. Got it. I'm not great, but I'll do my best. With renewed energy, Sancho shouted, Let's go. Find a team with a lighthouse bearer. Evelyn and Sancho moved into position, hiding in the brush as they observed a team in the distance. That guy, Evelyn whispered. He's a lighthouse bearer. He's running 3 lighthouses. He must be from the Pobaidoff family. Looks like they've already located the crown and are heading toward it. Let's follow. Sancho nodded. Evelyn called Lou from her pocket device, instructing him to stay behind and follow carefully. Okay, be careful, you two, Lou replied. Evelyn noticed the team ahead begin to split. They're going too far. What are they planning? Mr. Sancho will split up too. I'll follow the lighthouse bearer. If anything happens, call me immediately. Sancho agreed. Lou, meanwhile, quietly wondered if the others would be all right. As Evelyn followed her target deeper into the mist, she began to grow suspicious. Could this be a trap? She whispered. Have you noticed? Suddenly, the lighthouse bearer stopped and turned. I knew you were following me, Scout, he said coldly. But I didn't lead you here to find crown. I brought you to where your tomb will be. Lo Pabia, Evelyn. Before she could react, he vanished. Evelyn turned and gasped. A monstrous figure loomed behind her. I'm screwed. Mr. Lou. Mr. Sancho. Help. Rohan confirmed their plan with Neo. So, we just go to the throne and wait. Neo nodded. Since their team didn't have a lighthouse bearer, they would claim the throne room first and wait for another team to bring the crown. Then, they'd ambush them and take it. Rohan sighed. Whoever thought of this? It's dirty. It's cheating. A total dirty, deadly plan. Neo smiled proudly. It was my idea. Don't be proud, Rohan muttered. Urek walked up. Hey guys. Rohan looked up. What? Urek asked if they minded if he left for a bit. Neo raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem? Urek explained that he had a prior engagement, something he needed to take care of. But it wouldn't take long. It's not something to play with, he said. It'll be over in 10 seconds. At the duel site, Danzon stood silently, waiting. Hurry up and come. Urek Mazino, he said under his breath. High above, Chief Supervisor Rahab observed through a lighthouse. His eyes narrowed. Danzon? Why is he in that place? As Evelyn faced the monstrous figure in front of her, a chilling instinct overtook her. She thought to herself that she didn't know what kind of monster it was, but the sheer presence of it was terrifying. Just standing near it filled her with dread. She had to escape. She turned and ran. But in an instant, the monster lunged and grabbed her. It dragged her toward the water, its grip unrelenting. Evelyn struggled as she was pulled beneath the surface, unable to breathe. No, she thought. I can't. I have to use my strength. Urek arrived, calling out to Danzon with a cocky grin and asking if he'd been waiting long. Danzon sneered and admitted he hadn't expected Urek to actually show up. He thought the brat would run away scared after mouthing off. Urek laughed it off and replied that there was no way he'd skip something this entertaining. Danzon scowled and called him immature. He reminded Urek that he still didn't understand the vast gap between a regular and a ranker. Right now, Urek only seemed confident because he didn't know any better, but soon he'd be begging for mercy. He explained that, normally, rankers weren't allowed to engage regulars freely. For a confrontation like this, they'd need permission from the administrator. He told Urek to open his pocket, change it to visible mode, and locate the option, request a fight against a ranker. Originally, The feature was intended for internal rancor duels, but now and then, arrogant regulars like Urek used it to challenge those far above them. Danzon was about to say that Urek would probably hesitate when a prompt from the pocket interrupted him. You've requested a ranking fight. Which rancor do you wish to challenge? Urek calmly selected his target. Danzon. Dirty hair. This idiot. A burst of white light enveloped the area. Suddenly, the test administrator appeared before them. Urek was stunned at the figure's sudden arrival. The administrator turned to him and asked, "Are you the regular who requested a battle against a rancor?" Urek nodded. "That's right." The administrator studied him closely and thought to himself, "This one, he's from outside the tower." He finally said aloud, "Very well. I will allow this duel." Danzon was shocked. How could the administrator approve this so easily? He thought. The administrator declared that everything that happened from this moment on would be their own responsibility. Then, as he prepared to leave, Urek stopped him. "I have one more question," Urek said. The administrator paused. Urek asked, "Now that I've learned how to fight a rancor, what if I want to fight you?" The administrator didn't flinch. "You don't need permission for that. The administrator of the tower doesn't run from challenges. If you wish to defy the laws of the tower, you may do so anytime." Urek smiled. "Good. Now that that's clear, shall we begin?" Danzon charged forward, slamming a foot into the ground and sending debris flying toward Urek, who was launched backward. Danzon followed up at lightning speed, grabbing Urek and slamming him into the earth. Urek grunted. "Is this payback for position training a few days ago?" Danzon growled that this was to prove he wasn't the same person Urek had faced during Cyrene. From this moment on, Urek would have to flee for his life. He threw a punch, but Urek barely dodged, rolling away. Still, Danzon was faster and struck him again. Urek landed on his feet, analyzing the situation. The goal isn't to defeat him using the power of light, but with Shinsu. "It feels like I've been playing around in the tower under restriction. Now it finally feels like a real challenge." At the Wave Controller Training Camp, Baskerville stood in front of Urek. "Urek Mazino," he said, "you have great power." Urek smirked. "Of course." Baskerville admitted that he had never seen a regular with such immense Shinsu output. Though he hadn't met every regular, Urek's talent was clearly exceptional. Urek grinned. "So much so, I'd say this is just my base stat, not even special." But Baskerville warned him, his talent wasn't controlled at all. Unlike others, who channel Shinsu into a bong they shape, Urek's Shinsu emerged naturally and explosively, without forming bongs. It caused damage to the surroundings before dissipating. It wasn't controlled Shinsu, it was more like a natural Shinsu disaster. Urek beamed. "Sound great, doesn't it, Mr. Puppy?" "It's not a compliment," Baskerville snapped. "When someone is talking, you listen. But no matter how I look at you," Urek replied, "you don't seem like a person, you're just a puppy." "Then listen to this puppy," Baskerville retorted. "You can't control this disaster. Not yet. But you can subdue it." "Subdue it?" Urek asked. "Yes. With your own strength, you will force it to behave. The method is called the fishing net technique." "Fishing net," Baskerville demonstrated, telling him to open his hands like a net. "Your hand or the net. Use them to catch the wild Shinsu and subdue it." He added that it would take Urek years to master it, but he'd offer him every tip possible. Urek responded with his trademark grin. "Years? I'll do it in 2 days." "Then do it," Baskerville said. Danzon roared at Urek. "You're still running. It's different from what you imagine now, isn't it?" Urek smirked. "Don't rush me. I was going to show you anyway." Suddenly, Golden Shinsu surged behind Danzon, catching him off guard. He turned, wide-eyed. "That Golden Shinsu, it's the one from the cruise ship. Why is it here?" "That's impossible," Urek shouted. "Look closely. This is the result of my training. I'm using my hands as a net to subdue what I couldn't control before." The golden light spiraled into Urek's open hands. Danzon gaped. "What the hell?" That massive Shinsu is being pulled into his palms. Urek locked eyes with him. "Got it. Now, go." With that, Urek fired a condensed Shinsu blast toward Danzon. The rancor stood frozen, completely stunned. I narrowly missed, Urek said calmly. Danzon stammered, that gigantic Shinsu, it was his. Urek grinned. What do you think? It's a technique I trained just for this battle. He admitted it wasn't perfect yet, but it worked. He'd been thinking of what to call it, and had just made a decision. A technique where snakes come out from my 10 fingers and bind Shinsu. I'll call it Scorching Fist of Death. Far above, Chief Supervisor Rahab watched through the lighthouse. He sighed. He just mashed together random words. Idiot. He totally made that up on the spot. Danzon clenched his fists. It's already insane that a regular can manipulate Shinsu like this. And you've got your own technique? You must be from some rare race or a special family, right? Urek looked him dead in the eyes. Special family? Rare race? He echoed. I don't know about that. He stepped forward. But you and I, we're not the same. Danzon flinched. What are you saying? Urek declared, I am the light.